one pick or one prospect, but it's a good pick. It's a second-round pick. The same round that you drafted Shea Weber, the same round you drafted Roman Josi. I hate being the guy to look at everybody and say, what's in the best interest of the team? The players will tell you the best interest of the team is to get into the playoffs, and whatever happens, happens. You saw what they did on the road trip with all those young guys. They went toe-to-toe with Florida, Carolina, Tampa. They beat them. They're clearly better than the worst team in the division, the Red Wings, which we couldn't have said a month ago. And they're probably better than the Blackhawks, as we just saw on the road the last two games. By the way, without Philip Forsberg. But what's in the best interest of the team long term? I don't see this team being talented enough, as is constructed right now, to jump Florida or Carolina in the standings. Which means that no matter what they do the rest of the month, and it will be exciting and interesting hockey, no matter what they do the rest of the month, it sets themselves up for a matchup with the defending Stanley Cup champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Adam Vingan was on our show on Friday. I asked him, hey, if the Preds win 2 in Chicago this weekend, what does it mean? This is what he said.
Well, they might be in a playoff spot, and that would be, I think, then my feelings would remain the same. I mean, I like what I wrote today on The Athletic. I mean, I still think it's exciting. You know, it gives these games meaning, but as long as the Predators, do not talk themselves into going for it one more time. And I don't think this team is buying at the trade deadline. Like, I don't think that's happening, but you still need to at least get some future assets in return for at the very least your veteran players on expiring or 1-year contracts.
That's what has to happen. I mean, I hate saying it. I hate being the guy who, after they've won 4 in a row and have been just great. I mean, it's been a joy to watch. It's been fun to watch. Last night's game, that felt like the old times, right? Like, that felt like a hold on to your pants. Pekarine's playing fantastic. They're playing hard. They're playing together. They get a goal at the end of the game. It was awesome watching last night's game. But realistically, is this team going to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning? Probably not. This year, you have to go through Tampa Bay in order to get anywhere. Are they going to get past Carolina in the standings? Are they going to get past Florida in the standings? The talent on the roster would probably tell you no. When they lost to the Red Wings, anything's possible. We did this with the Titans a couple of years ago. And maybe the Titans are an example. The 2019 Titans that were 2-4. Mariota was the quarterback. Couldn't score a point against awful Denver. In comes Ryan Tannehill. On to the playoffs. In the AFC title game they go. But in the middle of that season, did you really feel like the Predators, did you feel like the Titans had that kind of roster? Did you feel like the Titans, when you watch them in the middle of the 2019 season, even at the end when they lost to New Orleans in a big game at home, they lost to the Texans in a big game at home, did you really think AFC title game with that team? And that's the question here. Because if you keep Mikael Granlund, you're keeping him for a month and maybe a playoff series, and then he's gone. And for the next 6 years, 7 years, whatever that second-round pick could be, you don't have anything. This happened last year with Craig Smith and Mikael Granlund. And people said, don't trade, don't trade, don't trade. Now, it was a weird year with the pandemic, slowing everything down. But ultimately, when they did trade, or when they didn't trade, and the year was over, they got nothing for Craig Smith. If Granlund doesn't come back, they would have gotten nothing from him. That was a first-round pick they used on Kevin Fiala, who they traded for Mikael Granlund, and would have had nothing if any other team in the league wanted to sign Granlund. Now you can trade him. Now you can trade Yarncroke. Now you can trade Eric Holla. Now you can trade Rocco Grimaldi. By the way, the leverage for trading guys and their values are much better. Don't you think teams want Calle Yarncroke a whole lot more now than maybe they ever have? So I hate sitting there, and it feels like when I tell you after they won 2 in a row, they've won 4 in a row, they've been red hot, the coach is clearly getting through to them, the goalies are playing out of their minds, the young guys are impressing, even the older guys seem like they're playing with a little bit more juice. I'm still saying, hey, slow down. The long-term plan probably doesn't change much, and it probably shouldn't. As painful as that is to say, it's easy to say when they're losing. Tear it down. Be sellers. Get rid of guys. It is a lot harder when they're winning. It's exciting. It's fun. But again, can they beat Tampa Bay? 615-737-1025. Calls and text 615-737-1025. Here's the question we're opening up with. Your reaction to the Predators and their good win last night. I mean, I thought last night's game, it felt kind of like a playoff game last night. It felt like a rivalry Chicago game, which it's been a while for that because Chicago has sucked for so long. But it felt like a game last night. 615-737-1025. Here's the question. Have your thoughts changed? 62% of you last week wanted to sell. Have you changed your mind? 3 in a row since that poll was conducted. Have you changed your mind? 615-737-1025. And coming up next, there are some things that perhaps you can hold on to if you want hope for this team. Are you buying them or selling them? We'll get to that next. We're live from the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com. We are live on the Game Nashville app. We are live on Twitch. We are live on YouTube. We are live wherever we're live. We're live. 615-737-1025. Great job by the team, by the way, taking care of that at the studio. We're at the Green Hill studio, which, again, is also powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025, The Game.
And that will do it. Predators win again. So the Predators sweep the series against the Chicago Blackhawks this weekend, and they have tied them for the 4th spot in the Central Division standing.
There you go, Pete Weber, the voice of the Predators. As the Predators swept Chicago, they are tied with Chicago for the 4th spot. They've got Dallas coming in town. They've got Chicago again coming in town. So, I mean, it's about hey, if you were somebody like me who was like, maybe I'll pass on my season tickets, move that on to next year and kind of let 2021 work its way out. And now you've got Dallas and Chicago. I mean, there are some big games. I am not taking away the bigness of these games, the excitement of these games. I'll say this. This kind of reminds me a little bit, not a lot, of 2017 when I said, look, you cannot beat the Chicago Blackhawks if you play them in a playoff series. I'm saying that now about Tampa Bay. Now, I think more people would agree with me about this Tampa Bay team than would have that Blackhawks team in 2017. But I can understand where a lot of people are saying the Predators can't beat this Tampa Bay team. But you guys said we couldn't beat that Chicago team. And I'm sure there are a lot of guys out there saying that. So I understand it. Let me just say this, though. I would totally be fine being wrong. I would totally be fine being completely wrong. The Predators going on to the Cup final, knocking out Tampa Bay on the way, going to the Cup final, winning the whole thing, a parade on Broadway, and everyone being like, you, sir, are an idiot. Just not sure that I feel like that's legitimately possible. I don't think this team is as good as that team was in 2017. I don't think this team has the potential to be as good as that team was in 2017. I just don't see it. So to me, one thing I hate, John Hines, and I've been saying this now for a couple of weeks, but John Hines deserves a lot of credit because it was negative. It was nasty the way people were discussing this team, and he was a part of it. Now, I think most of the fans understood. John Hines is what he is. Maybe he's not a great coach, but these problems with this team when things were bad, they're beyond Hines. It was almost like the anger of the fans was now pointed in the direction of David Poile. So I can understand why some people still said, this coach, his system is this, his that. And I just told you, hey, I don't think Hines is a problem. I put him on the list, like he ain't perfect, but I think Hines has really gotten through to this team. And I feel bad because of the position that they have won themselves into, where I feel now like John Hines has to look at the group if they were to trade Granlund, which I think they should, if they were to trade Holla, which I think they should, if they were to trade Yarncroke or Grimaldi or Sissons or any of these guys that other teams would take that would want to add for a playoff run, like I think they probably should if they can. And he's got to say, hey, I know I worked you guys and I had you guys focused mentally and you guys got us back in the race, but management decided to go in another direction. Hines was asked yesterday about what the importance of the wins were, and you almost feel as if listening to him that he's so proud of the guys that then turning around and selling guys off would probably hurt the overall message. Here's what Hines said.
Proud of the guys. I think, we came in and we've worked really hard. We've had a lot of adversity throughout the year, but I think when you look, as we continue to talk about from the start of the road trip, through now, there's just a lot of consistency to the way that we want to play. Guys have really worked hard and battled to put ourselves in position this weekend to try to close the gap. And it was 2 hard-fought games. Chicago's a good team. They're difficult to play against, but I really like just the focus level, the grittiness, the work ethic that we play with, and the commitment to play the game that we need to play to have success. Guys do it. And I think that's a tribute to the players.
I feel bad for Hines. When he got here, he was preaching in that locker room. Mental fortitude, work ethic, staying together, all of those things. He preached and preached and preached. And I doubted after 2 weeks listening to him talk, I doubted that was going to get through to this team. I was like, these guys were playing for a cup final. They were playing with Peter Laviolette. Here comes John Hines sitting there saying, hey, we got to change our work ethic. We got to change our mental fortitude. We got to focus. And I was like, And I'll give him credit. Even when things were bad, he didn't move off message. He stayed the same. Now things are going well. If you were to move guys out, it would hurt the morale of the team. It would be, everybody I think could chalk it up to, hey, this is a business. But it would definitely hurt what he's built, and that's something you have to consider. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Texter starts us off by saying, still sell some of the veterans, but don't blow it up. I would argue this. I don't think they really ever were going to blow it up. I know the Ekholm name is out there, and it's still out there. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN is going to join us later. I wonder how the national analysts feel about this recent run from the Predators, because I read Pierre Lebrun in The Athletic over the weekend, and he's still talking about possible Ekholm trades. And I feel like this fan base has moved off the idea of trading Ekholm. I would argue wait until after the expansion draft. I would probably keep Ekholm unless somebody just knocks my socks off. Then I think you might have to think about it. Ryan Ellis is not getting traded. Philip Forsberg is not getting traded. Johansson Duchesne not getting traded. The goalies are not getting traded. Yossi's got a no-movement clause, and you wouldn't trade any young players. So basically, they wouldn't blow it up. But I think the list is, and this is where you have to consider the Seattle expansion draft. Halla, fine, let him go. Cousins, fine, let him go. Richardson, if he ever gets healthy, fine, let him go. Granlund, definitely let him go if they're going to give you something good. Arvidsson, if somebody offers you something, now what do you do? Yarncroke, Grimaldi, what do you do? I mean, I hate being the guy to sit back there and say, well, now you guys have finally done what the coach said, and I still can't reward you. I feel bad about that. Craig texts into the text line. He says, Jared, I agree. We need to sell some of the smaller pieces and then structure who we keep in the expansion draft so Seattle will take either Ellis or Duchesne, and the money Seattle takes off of your books will go a long way in re-signing Ekholm or Forsberg. And they can be core players during a soft rebuild, which will only hopefully last 1 year. I only hope 1 year. And then the other thing, I keep seeing these, like the trade. Here's where I get confused. I'm with you. I would love to put Seattle in a position to where they have to take either Duchesne or Johansson. Forget about Ellis because you need 4 defensemen. You have no leverage in trading Ekholm, and he gets all the leverage in re-signing him if Seattle just takes him, because now who's going to take that spot? Carrier? So there's no way you can really leverage that. Not that it may not matter as far as leverage with Ekholm. He's a good player at 30 years old, but that's if you want to bring him back. But you got to set it up so you hope they take Johansson or Duchesne. I don't think they're going to take either guy. I think they're going to take a Yarncroke, or they're going to take a Sissons, or they're going to take somebody like that before they would take a Johansson or a Duchesne, which is why if I'm David Poile, I'm entertaining some offers on Yarncroke. I love Yarncroke. He scored last night. I thought it was going to come off the board, but he scored last night. He's red hot. He's a good player. He's a gritty player. He's got a career history of being a guy coaches love. That's the kind of guy you trade right now so that you don't have to worry about a spot for him on your expansion draft list. Trade him, get a second-round pick, wish him the best, go find another Calle Yarncroke. Let's go to Scott, who's up next here on Stillman Company. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Scott.
Jared, you realize they can set it up to where Ellis and Duchesne are the only 2 exposed, right?
They can't set it up so they're the only 2 exposed. They can set it up as to them being, if you were to look at, we'll go back to the last one. It was set up so that it was Neal or it was Yarncroke, and they had to pick one or the other, and they picked Yarncroke, and the other team took James Neal. It would be similar to that.
Yes. Well, I was just looking forward to discussing, which players the Predators are going to pick up for this playoff run. I'm sure that, now that we're in buy mode, correct?
Are you sure they're in buy mode? I'm not in buy mode. Are you in buy mode?
No, that was a needle at you.
I'm not in buy. I am not in buy mode at all. And I don't know where you're going with this, but I appreciate your call. To me, standing pat is the same as buying. And I know they're different, but I'm against both of them. I am firmly against both of them. And here's why I'm against both of them. Because Mikael Granlund, and I keep hammering on this with Granlund. Granlund, his value since the day he got here has never been higher. There is a team that wants to trade him. There is a team that is waiting for you to say, we're willing to trade Mikael Granlund. And they're going to give you something good, probably a second-round pick. And if you take on some money, they may give you a prospect too. Picks and prospects that are so badly needed. This time last year, when the trade deadline came, Granlund was not worth a second-round pick. Nobody was offering that for Mikael Granlund. And now you're being offered it right in front of you. Again, a second-round pick's not the end of the world. You used one for Brian Boyle, but you also used one on Roman Josi. You used one on Shea Weber. Those are good picks. To me, the idea of getting blasted by Tampa in 5 games and then having nothing from Mikael Granlund, that bothers me. 615-737-1025. More of your reaction from last night's game, where the Predators are. I see it blowing up in the text line. I see your calls in the calls. 615-737-1025. We'll get to those. And coming up next, one thing about last night's game that I watched, and when it happened, I said, oh my goodness, finally, thank you. Thank you. When it happened, I was just so happy. We'll get to that coming up next. Tune in later on in the show as we will reveal a keyword for you to text into the game text line for your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Home Gate giveaway. It's a Dos Equis prize pack, including a case of beer, dessert from Nothing Bundt Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. You must be 21 or older to enter. Get excited for that. Stillman Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
Predators get it in the zone. Johansson from the right board, a shot that was blocked. Taken behind the net by Kirby Dach for Chicago. And his pass intercepted by Johansson, giving it to Tolvanen. Back now for Josi to score! Tic-tac-toe! Predators retake the lead, 3-2, and a goal by the captain, Roman Josi.
Yeah, Joey got it on the blue line, and we had some space. I think their wingers were kind of stretching out a little bit, and he made a good play to RV to Tolby, and back to me. It was a really nice play by them. A lot of passes, and I kind of just walked in, and I was thinking low blocker the whole time, and luckily went posting in.
Roman Josi for the win last night against Chicago, and I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed that, why I loved it so much. I tweeted this out when Chicago got on the board in the third period and made it 2-2. You could feel all the momentum going from one side to the other side. You felt it all with Chicago. And I say this in football, I say this in basketball, I say this kind of in baseball, and I also believe it totally in hockey, which is who's going to be the guy to bring the momentum back. I guess it's a little harder in baseball because you have to wait for your turn to bat. But in every other sport, like in basketball, okay, things aren't going our way. Who are we giving the rock to? Who's going to get the big rebound, block the big shot? Who's going to hit the big three to get us back in the game? Football, who's going to make the big defensive play, the interception, the sack, the fumble? Who's going to make the big throw, the big catch? And in this case for the Predators, Pekka Rinne was doing all he could. Predators took some stupid penalties, and the Predators put themselves kind of on their heels in that third period. They were packing it in, but I said, who's going to make the play? And when it was Roman Josi, the captain, the guy you pay all that money to, the guy who the organization, everybody who works there, lines up at the doorway to give Roman Josi a standing clap of applause as he walks in for his press conference to sign his new contract. You get that kind of treatment, you got to make big plays in big moments for me. And everybody will say, well, Jared, he's a Norris Trophy guy. He's my biggest knock on him. And I never really got into the whole Norris Trophy thing. My biggest knock on Roman Josi was that I always felt like in the big moments, did he really elevate the team? Like, yeah, he had a nice 4-point night on a February in 2018 at Colorado. But in the big moments, the big gotta have it, I can't think of a big moment he had on that cup run. I can't think of a big moment he had last year in the Arizona playoffs. I can't think of a big moment he had in that Dallas series. I can't think of a big moment he had in that Winnipeg series. And I know some people say, well, he's a defenseman, Jared. I mean, that's what I'm telling you. Where I sit, you pay the guy the money, you give the guy all the love, you prop up everything he does. When I need you to make big plays. He made one last night. I absolutely loved it. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, maybe this team is onto something. I'll say this. As somebody who is in favor of selling, there is a little doubt in my mind about that opinion. Texter to the text line says the Preds should only trade Granlund if you get a first-round pick and Duchesne can come back and take his place in the lineup. Then you could go try to sign Granlund in free agency if you unload Duchesne to Seattle. Let me say this. The Titans are doing it the Preds didn't, and that is stop falling in love with your own guys. They traded for Granlund at the deadline in 2019. They got rid of Kevin Fiala, who, by the way, is kind of becoming a player with the Minnesota Wild. They traded Fiala. They got Granlund. Granlund came in here, and he did nothing. Then he continued to do nothing. Then the trade deadline came last year. He was getting kind of hot under John Hines. And next thing you know, nobody offers you anything good for him. Because I was told, had the Predators been offered a second-round pick on Granlund or Smith last year, Poyle would have done the deal. Had they been offered a second-round pick, they weren't offered by anybody in the league a second-round pick for either guy. So he wasn't worth that then last year. Has a good year this year. Again, playing under Hines. Clearly, Hines is good for him. He has a good year this year, and now somebody wants to give you a second-round pick for him. Now someone is offering you a second-round pick. They're saying, here, please, take our second-round pick. And yet, now we're saying, no, it's got to be a first-round pick. He wasn't worth that on the market in free agency last year. You didn't even really try to bring him back until push came to shove at the end. Then you tried to bring him back. But it wasn't like you were bidding with anybody else. Nobody wanted him. Cap was going down. Now people want him. That's called selling high. That's what you want to do. I do not think Mikael Granlund is a player worth keeping beyond this year. So to me, I don't care if it's a second-round pick or a first-round pick, he's going to Toronto. Get ready to quarantine. You can now stream Stillman Company on YouTube. You can watch it for the 7-day period, not the 14, the 7-day period that it will take for you to become a Toronto Maple Leaf. But to me, he's going to Toronto. Texter says, CC says, the season is short. There are young players who are playing well with the veterans, so keep the team together. In the end, only one team is going to be celebrating anyway. Trade Ellis after the season, leave Duchesne unprotected, and re-sign Ekholm. Reevaluate the team after the season is over. See, to me, I hate that. Here's why I hate it. First of all, you have to do something. Trading and acquiring and selling and buying, it is not a system where everything all of a sudden you can do what you want to do. I get the tweets all the time. Hey, let's trade Johansson and Duchesne, and let's trade Ellis, but let's keep everybody who's playing well. You know the rest of the league, they don't want guys who stink either. So if you got a guy who stinks, nobody's going to want him. Nobody's going to pay you for him. This idea of, hey, send Duchesne off to Seattle, trade Ellis, move see, it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't add up for that to be realistic. You can't get rid of all the players you like, get rid of all the players you hate, get rid of all the players that aren't worth their contracts, and keep the guys you do like and sign them to more money. It's not that simple. The idea that, hey, there's only going to be one team celebrating in the end anyway, so let them do it. Again, Shea Weber a second-round pick, Roman Josi a second-round pick. You don't want to go back to the second round? You don't want to get Toronto's second-rounder? You don't want to add that trade chip this year that maybe at the draft somebody wants something from you? You can move it for more picks down the road? I want that. I guess some of you don't. I want that, though. Texter says, my thoughts have not changed after the game last night. I would trade Granlund and Haula, and I would be listening to offers on Ekholm and Ellis. I kind of agree with that, other than I don't think they're trading Ekholm, and I don't think they can trade Ellis. Remember, Ellis is hurt. Ellis had surgery. Who's going to trade you for a guy with 4 more years, I believe, after this year? 4 more years at 6'2", coming off of surgery when he's had a history of injuries lately anyways. My guess is nobody. Texter says, the Preds are deaf in sell mode, but not a clear house fully. Room needs to be made for the rookies, and Rocco feels like he's filling into Arvidsson's role, using less minutes to do it as well. Arvidsson's time on ice is 16. Rocco is 12. Arvidsson's shooting the puck is also down from his 30-goal years. Shooting percentage is about the same, though. I know Arvidsson scored yesterday. He's not the same player. You know, I got crushed. Ian, you can back me up on this one. I got crushed when they signed him to a 7-year contract. Fair?
You even got a T-shirt made about you. Yes.
They made a T-shirt?
They did. They made a T-shirt that said, Jared, he's a 30-goal scorer.
Oh, wow. You know, I think I remember that now that you say that.
Yeah, I think that's something Robbie had that on on Twitter. Yeah.
Robbie said that, and then it just blew up. I mean, every time he scored a goal, what do you think now, Jared? Whoa. And I'm like, I still don't think it's a steal of a contract. You signed him for 7 years. Well, but Jared, he had 30 goals last year. You're only paying $425. He's not the same player. I think we need to take into account. I've heard Willie Donick say this on the air a lot, and I somewhat get bothered by it a little bit, which is, you know, if Ryan Ellis was a little bit taller, he would have been a top of the first round guy. Well, he's not. And Arvidsson's not bigger, and the injuries are catching up to both of them. And I never thought that guy was worth one good year at 30 goals, disappeared in the playoffs. You give him a 7-year contract. He's certainly not up there. I would look to move Arvidsson in the offseason. I also, when I think about, you know, who I'm protecting and not protecting, I have to come up with the list. But if Seattle wants to take Victor Arvidsson, I'm not against it. I'm really not. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who are, but I just would say, hey, you want him? Take him. Because I don't project Arvidsson ever getting back to what he once was. 615-737-1025. There's an NFL story that I got to tell you, I am not Yeah, there are a lot of things I'm going to complain about in life. This is not one of them. And I think it is ridiculous for anybody like me or you who's an average Joe, who is not making $8 million a year, who is not in the NFL, who is not working only half of the year, who is not there is something about the NFL. Usually I side with the players over the owners. I'm not listening to this one, though. We'll get to that coming up next. T-Mobile and 102.5 The Game are giving you and 3 friends the chance to win a stay-and-play experience at the Hermitage Golf Course. My friends, actually, they were out at Hermitage a couple weekends ago. Listen in today at 4:15 for the keyword to text into the game text line at 615-737-1025. More details at thegamenashville.com contest page. Stillman Company were delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
And Dominique, again, you were the president of the NFL Players Association, so no one understands the issues here better than you do. And I just want to give you the floor first. What is your reaction to now this virtual certainty that the NFL is going to go to a 17-game schedule?
I mean, it's obviously about money to extend the schedule. They're finding new ways to generate more revenue, which I think in theory is good for everybody. That means a higher cap, and that means more money for the owners, means more money for the players. But the biggest problem I have with this and putting the health and safety things aside It's that the players for whom this is going to be the most difficult and the most onerous, the players for whom their careers will be shortened, the players for whom they will not make more money, those players are not the players who are going to benefit from this. So we started this conversation talking about how quarterbacks don't really participate in training camp, and we've seen that quarterbacks are playing longer and longer, and the star players will be protected. But there are going to be a lot of guys who have their careers shortened from maybe 2 to 3 years to 1 or 2 years, maybe 5 or 6 years to 4 or 5 years. And that is millions of dollars that will not go to them.
That was Dominique Foxworth, ESPN NFL analyst, longtime player, longtime Players Association representative, president, whatever. So Dominique Foxworth is sitting there and he is telling you and he's saying, hey, 17 games, there's somebody's going to get squeezed out of this. Alvin Kamara tweeted out that he thought it was dumb to go to 17 games. This week, the owners are going to vote on 17 games. Basically, the owners are going to vote, do we want more money? And I'm going to guess, I could be wrong, I'm going to guess it's going to go 32-0. Because, again, that's what this is about, right? Do we want more money? Raise of hands. Every owner's going to raise their hand. And you're going to hear more players than Alvin Kamara complain about it. You're going to hear more breakdowns from guys like Dominique Foxworth. And I like Dominique Foxworth. And I give Dominique Foxworth credit because when they set him up for this on ESPN this morning, I thought he was going to go nuts. I thought he was just going to go wild. I thought he was going to be like, this is crazy. They don't care about the players. They don't this. They don't. He's like, hey, it's going to squeeze some guys out and aren't going to make more money. The higher paid guys are going to make more money. The lower paid guys are already making more money. But guess what? I don't feel bad for NFL players. Now, I never played the game, so there'll be NFL players that'll say, well, hey, you see my wrist right here? I can't move it right. It doesn't move up and down. It doesn't whatever. They'll say that about their wrist because they suffered an injury, and that's what's happened to them. But guess what? You agreed to it. You agreed to it. Alvin Kamara can say he doesn't like the idea of a 17th game. Your union agreed to it. And I'll be honest, I think this far benefits everybody else. Even if it's that middle tier player that kind of gets squeezed out, I think it benefits the fans. I think it benefits the owners because they're going to make more money. Thus, it benefits the players because this is a revenue split in the NFL. So the players are going to get more money. The salary cap's going to go up. It's going to benefit the fans because there's another game to watch, more games to go to, more of a chance for your team to be in the playoffs. It used to be 1-3 was a death sentence in the NFL. Well, maybe now with a 17th game, it's not. It's better for people like us who now have another game to break down, another pregame show to host. It's better for your bars and restaurants that fill up whenever you've got a game. It's better for your downtown economy, like in our city, where you've got downtown parking, you've got tailgating, you've got bars, you've got restaurants, you've got fans going to games and using their money there. Think about the concessionaires, who, by the way, have just been crushed over the last year. And I'm not talking about the concession companies. I'm not talking about Levy's and Delaware North and name all of them. Legends, which I think is Jerry Jones' company. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people that when you go to the stand and you say, I'd like a pizza, a bottle of water, and a Miller Lite, that check your ID and hand you the pizza and hand you the water and hand you the Miller Lite. Those people oftentimes are volunteers or they're making very little money. But that money is very important. I'm talking, big picture compared to everything else. But that money's important to those people. That money is important now, and you're talking about adding a football game. Talking about the individual when there's parking lots outside the stadium, the guy who's waving you in, hey, that'll be $35. He's not doing that for free. So you're talking about adding that so that everybody gets a little piece of the pie no matter what, even us. We will get a piece of that pie. We will get more revenue because we'll have another game to break down. We'll have more pregame shows. We'll have more. It benefits everybody. And I feel the same way that I feel about this as I do Thursday night football. The players consistently complain about Thursday night football. If the league cared about our health and safety, we wouldn't play Thursday night football. Okay? But if you cared about your health and safety that much, you wouldn't agree to play Thursday night football. You wouldn't agree to play 17 games. But you like the money, so you agree to it. And I like watching Thursday night football. And Amazon wants to buy Thursday night football. And Thursday night football is one of the most watched shows on television. So we like it. We watch it. You make money off of it. We make money off of it. Everybody makes money off of it. Players, you make money off of it. So I'm sure later this week when the owners' meetings happen, the 17th game will be discussed. I think it's not going to be all that fair, but I don't want to hear any complaining about it. It's not going to be fair in this sense. Like the way they're going to match it up. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the worst team, is going in the AFC. So we'll use the Titans as the example. The worst team is going to host the worst team in that same division in the other conference. So, for example, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who play that last game of the year and stink every year, they will get Atlanta at home. The Titans will get New Orleans at home. Next year, the NFC will be the home team. So the Titans will get New Orleans at home in a 17th game, and Indianapolis will get Tampa Bay. And guess what? I like it. I do. I like it. And again, I think it's so funny that now we're going to see Alvin Kamara comes out, and maybe I'm over-exaggerating this. Like maybe ESPN was just looking for something to talk about today, so they brought this up. But I do feel later in the week when this becomes a thing, when this, in fact, becomes something that is discussed at length, that there's going to be some people that are like, if they care about player safety, they won't play on the 17th game. And I would just say this. When you sign the new CBA, which upped the veteran minimum salaries, which upped the benefits across the league, which explained the revenue and salary cap, I think gave players a little bit more slice of the pie, and gave them the right to add to the playoffs, and gave them the right to add a 17th game, did you think they weren't going to do it? Of course they were going to do it. They didn't even hesitate on the 7th playoff team and the extra playoff game. But once you gave the owners the right to go to 17 games, did you think they were going to find it in their heart to not do it? They're building television packages around this. There was talk that when they went to 17 games, it was going to be a neutral site game for every team. And that was going to be on in the morning at 9:30. And that ABC, who bought in with Disney and ESPN in this new package, got some Super Bowls out of it, ABC was going to have that 9:30 in the morning game every Sunday. Well, then they turned around and they said, well, that's probably not a great idea because the pregame shows are where the networks really make the money, so they want people to watch the pregame shows. So there will still be some London games and some international stuff going on, but there will be a 17th game. And guess what? I'm glad there will be. And if you're a player and you don't like it, go complain to the union because you guys agreed. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. He will join us next hour. But coming up next, NCAA tournament basketball I watched. And one, I want to talk about how grateful I was for what we saw this weekend. Very grateful. Two, I just have a problem with the basketball media in general. Because I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, what? Is this not what we're supposed to be watching, what we're looking at? So I got 5 takeaways from the weekend. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. We are streaming on Twitch. We are streaming on YouTube. I think what you do is you just pull up YouTube. So on your phone, your TV. I mean, everybody's got a smart TV now, right? Or they've got some kind of stick in the back of the TV. They can get YouTube. Smart TV, iPhone, iPad, Android device, you name it. Just put in 1025 The Game or Stillman Company or something, and you can literally just click it. You can literally just watch us. I used to always wonder, people asked during kind of the shutdown about, was there any way they could see me and Floyd? And I was thinking, if you want to see Floyd and I just sitting there on a couch, you can see Floyd and I just sitting there on a couch. But obviously we weren't there yet. Now we are. And I apparently heard that others are trying to catch up to us today. So Robbie and Joe have been live on everything because every time they come back from break, they talk about all the different things they're live on. I think we're live on the same stuff. But it's a lot harder to do the show yourself and try to keep up. Like Robbie's like, so-and-so on YouTube says, and so-and-so on Periscope says, and so-and-so on. I'm like, there's no way I can host a show solo and be able to do that. But we are up and running, and if you're somebody who is working from home or is used to working from home, you want to see us, just go ahead, put it right in there. We'll have some, by the way, we'll have some changes perhaps coming down here in just the near future. So not that I'm teasing anything or whatever, but just letting that, be known. So, first of all, let me take a second to talk about how grateful I am for the NCAA tournament. This time last year, we had no NCAA tournament. Everybody was in just the height of being stuck at home. We didn't have a ton of knowledge as to what the virus was or what the virus wasn't. We had one politician telling us one thing. We had other politicians telling us another thing. We had doctors, clashing, and we didn't know what was what. And I think there was a level of anxiety and there was a level of fear associated with almost everybody. I know I had it. I thought to myself, if we don't play sports anytime soon, I'm not going to have a job because no one's going to watch, no one's going to listen, no one's going to this, that, or the other. This year, college basketball was so weird during the year. Shutdowns, teams couldn't play, and this team was supposed to play this big game, and then it was moved, and then this team's going to play this team instead, and the out-of-conference was weird, and the Thanksgiving tournaments were weird, and it just didn't feel like a real college basketball season. I talked about this with Jason Fitz of ESPN Radio last week about, does it feel like the NCAA tournament just doesn't have the same juice that we're used to having? And is it a college basketball problem? Is it a pandemic problem? Is it a, whatever? Let me say this. This past weekend, we had great basketball. I mean, we had great basketball. I watched them all. I watched Oregon State. I watched Alabama, UCLA. I watched the end of Arkansas and Oral Roberts, which I thought Oral Roberts should have won. I mean, it was fantastic. And even though we don't have the blue blood programs, and it's definitely a different feel without the fans in the stands, I am so thankful, truly thankful, that college basketball and the NCAA tournament is back. Because I don't know about you, but I keep thinking back to last year when everything was shut down this time. Everything was locked down. The only thing we had to talk about was the NFL draft. And we weren't even sure how that was exactly going to play out. So I just want to take a second to say, hey, after the year that we went through, but specifically this time last year, no NCAA tournament, it was good to have the NCAA tournament back. That being said, there's one thing that really, truly bothered me yesterday. I watched the games. Gonzaga's really good. Michigan's really good. Alabama's got to make some free throws if they want to win. You're not going to get any sympathy from me if you miss your free throws. USC's pretty good. I mean, those were my 4 takeaways. But the one thing that kills me is the college basketball media. And that is that the guys that call the games, the guys that write about the sport, like in the months of November, that when we're sitting there worried about NFL playoffs in November, December, they're sitting there saying, like, have you checked out this guy at Alabama Tech? He's averaging 53 points a game. Like, let us know later. We're watching Green Bay and Dallas. We'll talk to you later. And Joe Rexrode, he is certainly one of those people, the basketball media elitists, the people that tell you Rick Barnes is a good coach, the people that tell you Jerry Stackhouse will get out of it at Vanderbilt. And last night, if there ever was what I call the college basketball cover, where the college basketball media just totally ignores blatant stupidity, it was last night in the Alabama-UCLA game. When Alabama, who had not made a free throw in a month, when Alabama is down by 3 at the end of the game and UCLA lets them get a shot off, I thought right then and there that I believe it was Jim Spinarkle, who was calling the game with Iron Eagle, should have just gone bananas about Mick Cronin not fouling Alabama in that instance. They should have gone nuts. Remember when Romeo Crennel stupidly went for it for 2 against the Titans, and Rich Gannon wouldn't let it go? And Rich pulled the card out of his pocket and was like, see this card right here? See what's written on this card? This tells you every time you should go for 2. And the analytics might say, Rich was about to stroke out. He was all bent out of shape about it. I'm watching last night. The guy, they don't foul. Guy gets an open look. It wasn't a perfect look, but given the circumstances, a pretty good look. Alabama drills the 3, and I'm like, I hope UCLA wins. And what I hate is that I hope Alabama wins. What I hated was that UCLA won, because I thought Mick Cronin should have been punished by losing and being talked about all day today for not fouling in that situation. You can explain to me, I'm not a big fan of the debate that is, do you foul, do you not foul? I think you always foul. I'm not a huge fan of the debate, but I understand some coaches that don't do it. But not in this case. Not in this case. No. Not when Alabama was as bad as they were shooting free throws yesterday. This was Mick Cronin after the game as to why they didn't foul.
I'm a foul guy. Our concern that he had a timeout, and I had told, he saw me, Coach Oates saw me telling Tiger and the guys to foul, when Dave makes it. We're going to foul at half court. So my biggest concern was that when we went to foul, they were going to shoot a half-court shot, and we were going to foul a guy shooting a three-point shot.
Isn't that always the fear? Think about this. This is what Mick Cronin just told you. I'm a foul guy. So when some coaches tell you it's 50-50, some coaches foul, some coaches don't, he's telling you I'm a foul guy. But I saw Coach Oates, and I saw him see me tell them to foul, and he had a timeout, so I thought he might use his timeout. They may put up a half-court shot while we try to foul, and then they'll get 3 free throws. Okay. Let's think about this. First of all, everybody in the building would have assumed that you told your guys to foul because it was the right thing to do. Secondly, if you foul a guy shooting a half-court shot and he makes it and then makes the free throw, crazy things happen. You'll get blamed for it as a coach, but the odds are much more likely that they hit an open 3 when you don't foul than it is that they will hit a half-court jump shot and foul that three-point shooter. Third, even if you foul the guy shooting a half-court shot, unless he makes it, are you really in trouble? Did anybody expect Alabama to make those free throws? I have no sympathy for Alabama today because I don't believe you should advance in March if you can't make a free throw. I tweeted this out last night, and I stand by it. John Calipari's Memphis Tigers that lost a national championship because they couldn't hit a free throw watched Alabama's performance last night, and they blushed. They were embarrassed for them. So I go back to this. Did you really think Alabama was going to hit 3 free throws? If you had fouled Alabama trying to shoot a three at the, with 4 seconds to go or whatever it was, and they try to throw up a half-court shot and you foul them and they call 3 shots, you expect Alabama to make all 3? I didn't last night. So where was the TV broadcast just reaming out Mick Cronin? Where was Jay Billis or Dickie V or these guys on television on ESPN saying what Mick Cronin did last night was tragically stupid? Nowhere. We would do it in football. We'd probably do it in the NBA, although the coach doesn't matter that much in the NBA. But the basketball media, these guys, they just give these coaches passes. It's like Rick Barnes doesn't win a game in the NCAA tournament over like a 10-year stretch. He gets to the Sweet 16 with a team that at one point was ranked number 1 in the country. And nobody ever sits there and says, maybe Rick Barnes isn't a good coach. No. In fact, it's the opposite. Dickie V. Oh, he's unbelievable, baby. He's awesome. He's a great coach. He's this, he's that. Oh, my goodness. I'm watching last night's game. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. That was my one of all the things that bothered me watching basketball this weekend. I mean, I can go through each game. I think Oregon State is a good team, very well coached. I thought that was a good game against Loyola Chicago. And I thought that they really stood up to it when Loyola made their run. And I'm going to miss Sister Jean because I don't know how many more tournaments she's got left in her, but I love having her. I believe that Oral Roberts had a great look, could have beaten Arkansas. I'm worried for Arkansas's sake. I'm not sure they're that good. Baylor is legit, and we need to give credit to Baylor, Michigan, and Gonzaga because they're all pretty good. But this game last night, this is the one game that I watched where I was just like, are you kidding me? It was a great game, and Mick Cronin doesn't foul? Oh, my goodness. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you've got a thought on it, 615-737-1025. Your thoughts from the weekend. But coming up, I got 5 big takeaways from the NCAA tournament weekend that was. Plus, Greg Wyshynski, ESPN, will join us later this hour, and we'll ask him the question. Does the national media believe in the Predators like the Predators believe in the Predators, or like the fans are starting to believe in the Predators? We'll get to that coming up later this hour as well. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. Stillman Company right here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app, YouTube, Twitch, you name it, we're there. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
You had to lay back here and let them catch it.
Get it in. Yep. Quinterly. Pass it off. Reese. Overtime. And that's it. This unlikely run continues for UCLA. The Bruins dance into the Elite Eight. An overtime victory against the number 2 seed in the East, Alabama, 88-78.
Free throws are always a mental thing. I mean, it's the same distance. There's zero variables in free throws other than the pressure you put on yourself mentally. I mean, I always tell the guys, turn yourself into a robot at the free throw line. It's the same thing. Do the same routine every time. So, yeah, why it became a mental thing, I don't know if some early misses by some guys made other guys start thinking about it. I don't have the answer to that, and it's disappointing.
That was Nate Oates, the Alabama coach. They lose in the Sweet 16. UCLA moving on in what was a great game in spite of Mick Cronin's coaching yesterday. And I'll say this, I thought Alabama, I kept saying this up to the SEC tournament and even after the SEC tournament, which was I felt like Alabama was so dependent upon the three-point shot that there was going to be a game where the shots didn't fall. And when those shots don't fall, I think teams that are dependent upon the three-point shot, I think they struggle to advance in the tournament because there is a game along the way that keeps them from reaching their potential. And I felt like that was going to happen to Alabama. I didn't think it'd be free throw shooting, but it obviously very much clearly was. And Alabama couldn't make free throws yesterday, and I have no sympathy for you. In college basketball, if you can't make a free throw with scholarship athletes, I have no sympathy for you losing. So I got 5 takeaways from the weekend of basketball as we head into the Elite Eight. Tonight we got Elite Eight games on. I got 5 takeaways from the weekend, and I guess we'll start right at the top.
Number 1.
Tournament seeding is totally screwed up this year. But guess what? Can you really blame anybody for it? I mean, again, let's just compare it to last year. We didn't have a tournament last year. The seeding this year is wild. We put everybody in the Big Ten at the top. We put everybody in the SEC towards the top-ish, where Tennessee's a 5 seed. And we put everybody from the Pac-12 at the bottom. And I just feel like the tournament seeding this year, like Oral Roberts, not a 15. That was a good basketball team. Oregon State, good basketball team. When you don't have a non-conference, and I know there were some non-conference basketball games this year, but there weren't a lot, and there weren't the premium non-conference basketball games, and even those didn't have the same feeling as the previous non-conference seasons have felt. I just kind of felt in my heart like you knew the seeding was going to be screwed up from the jump. This is totally all over the place. Clearly they got Gonzaga right. Clearly they got Michigan right. Clearly they probably got Baylor right. But other than that, I mean, everything is all over the place with the seeding. I don't think Arkansas is a 3. I don't think UCLA is an 11. I don't think Alabama's a 2. I just think who's the best team in the SEC? It's clearly Alabama, regular season conference tournament champions. They didn't lose much, make them a 2. But this year, most years the seeding is somewhat off. This year, the seeding is a mess. But you can't really blame anybody for it.
Number 2.
Give the Pac-12 credit. Now, this is a much bigger story, and I think this also involves Pac-12 football because for the most part, we call it the Power 5. But we all watch, and I'm, again, speaking mostly football here, but basketball I think is somewhat the same. Fan bases are the same. We all watch Big Ten football. We all watch Ohio State when they play big games in football. We watch the SEC. We watch the top of the Big 12 if it's Oklahoma or Oklahoma State or Texas or Baylor. We'll watch the top of it. They'll get their due. They'll get into the playoff. Even the ACC. If there's a dominant team, Florida State a couple of years ago when they had Jameis Winston, now it's Clemson, everybody gets their due. Everybody gets their games on TV. Everybody gets their marquee matchups except the Pac-12. Basketball is no different. We treat in our hearts the Pac-12 like it's really not a Power 5 conference. We treat it like it's the Mountain West. We treat it like it's the WAC. We treat it like it's the WCC. We treat it like it's something other than the way we treat the Big Ten, the way we treat the ACC, the way we treat the SEC, the way we treat really all of college sports. And clearly, Pac-12 basketball knows what they're doing. Because Oregon was legit, got knocked out yesterday. USC legit. UCLA legit. Oregon State legit. Those teams are good. And the Pac-12, like I heard Joe Rexrow today talking about, we can't make all these big statements based upon Ohio State losing or by Illinois losing, or we can't. Yes, we can. That's how this sport is judged, by that. The Pac-12 needs some respect. I would say if I was the Pac-12 commissioner, I know Larry Scott, their commissioner, is on his way out, and he's done a terrible job anyways. And some of this might be his fault, that they're not getting the love. But if I'm the Pac-12, come football season, I'm saying, hey, we play an extra game. You guys don't watch us, but remember what we did in basketball.
Number 3.
Gonzaga and Michigan are really good. Baylor's good too. But Gonzaga and Michigan are really, really good. I think the only way somebody beats Gonzaga is if they shoot a bunch of threes. Gonzaga's a 2-point shooting team. You shoot a bunch of threes, you make them. I think you can knock out Gonzaga. I don't know how you beat Michigan. I mean, they're tough. And I said this like 3 or 4 weeks ago. They played on CBS, a Sunday game against Ohio State. And I said, man, Michigan is tough. I don't know how you beat them. Then they got smoked by Illinois, and I started to have some doubts. I'm sorry, that ACC squad of Florida State, that's a good team. Leonard Hamilton's a good coach, and they just crushed them yesterday. I mean, crushed them. It wasn't even close. It was never close. Gonzaga and Michigan, I know they're 1 seeds. I know we know this. They're really good.
Number 4.
The SEC has no elite team. Even in Arkansas, who is in the Elite Eight, the SEC has no elite team. Alabama is not an elite SEC team. Tennessee never played like an elite team, probably doesn't have the players to be an elite team. Florida, 2 up and down this year. Kentucky, not good enough. Everybody else stunk. LSU, they pay their players, and LSU, fights hard. They earn their money on LSU's team, but they weren't elite either. I mean, the SEC this year just didn't have a really good team. The ACC, Florida State, you could maybe argue was there. I think Florida State would beat Arkansas on a neutral floor if they didn't run into Michigan. There's no elite team in the SEC this year. There never was. We thought maybe Alabama was that. Clearly they were the best team, but even they're flawed. They got good players, Quinterly, Herb Jones, but the SEC, far from the days of when I was in high school and Billy Donovan had Florida in the national title game and won it back-to-back years. Kentucky was good. Chris Lofton, Bruce Pearl, Tennessee, even Vandy had a good team. There is none of that right now in the SEC.
Number 5.
I loved watching the games this weekend, but we need the Blue Bloods. Like, we need the good schools in there. We need Duke in there. We need Kentucky in there. We need Louisville in there. We need Ohio State not to lose in the first round. We need North Carolina. We need the coaches. We need the schools. We need Calipari. We need Duke and Coach K. We just need them. Not to say that Gonzaga doesn't deserve what they have, or Michigan is not a nice little basketball program. It is. But don't we need the Blue Bloods? Don't we need Carolina and Roy Williams? Dadgummit. Don't we need Kansas, who also, like LSU, pays their players? Don't we need Kansas to be there? Don't we need Calipari to be there? I miss them. I do. And again, good basketball. We're doing the best we can with what we got. None of those teams really deserved to be playing right now. But just as a sport, I just feel like we need them. 615-737-1025. We'll get to all your reaction. A lot of Preds reaction today. They took 2 on the road in Chicago. They've won 4 in a row. The selling discussion has cooled off a little bit, but is the national media buying that? Are they buying it for the Predators? Greg Wyshynski, ESPN. He will join us next. Stillman Company, we right here are on ESPN 1025 The Game. Again, streaming everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Twitch, wherever I guess we're streaming. So go ahead and stream, watch the show, or listen as you always do on the Game Nashville app. FanDuel Sportsbook app, you know that is my official sportsbook app. I love the FanDuel Sportsbook app. There is always one team that ruins your bracket, and that's why this year I am betting the tournament on the FanDuel Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook. Because on FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter if you're betting on Gonzaga or Michigan, or hey, if you want to roll with Oregon State, go ahead. New users get up to $1,000 back in site credit if your first bet doesn't win. And if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. Yes, you. They're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every single day you bet the tournament. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Just use the promo code JGM so they know that I sent you. FanDuel Sportsbook, again, they gave away $1 million, and they're going to do so again before the end of the tournament. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code JGM. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. No purchase necessary. Restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for first online real money wager only. Site credit is not withdrawable. Expires 14 days after receipt. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. For problem gambling support, call 1-800-889-9789.
And that will do it. Predators win again. So the Predators sweep the series against the Chicago Blackhawks this weekend, and they have tied them for the 4th spot in the Central Division standings.
There you go. The Predators have tied Chicago. They are in a playoff spot. Now, as I've said many times, I'm not sure what that means, because if you play Tampa Bay, I mean, let's be honest, Tampa Bay is pretty good. Roman Josi, though, after the game, you can tell the players are excited to be in a playoff spot. Here's what he said.
Obviously, tonight wasn't the prettiest game, but we found a way to win, and that's the most important part. And I think with everything we've been through the whole year, to be close to a playoff spot right now, same points with Chicago. It's huge for us, and it definitely gives us a lot of energy going forward here.
So then the question has to be, have the Predators done enough to not be sellers at the trade deadline? I was reading The Athletic this weekend, reading ESPN, and the sentiment nationally, at least before they swept Chicago, was no. Greg Wyshynski joins us now, ESPN. Greg, let's start right there. Do you buy this Predators run as something tangible, something feasible, that if you were advising David Poile, you would say, you know what, Don't worry about trading Granlund to Toronto. Don't worry about Ekholm or Ellis or whatever it is. This team maybe should have a look at it. What would you say?
It's insane. Of course they should sell. What are we doing? Like you said, they're competing as hard as they can, and you have to give them credit for the results. But the ultimate prize is to get absolutely murdered by Tampa Bay, who, remember, is not only the best team in this division right now, but will only get better because Nikita Kucherov is coming back for the playoffs. So, right now you have to give them credit for turning their season around. At least they're making it respectful. At least it looks like they're going to be a team that plays beyond the end of the regular season based on these playoff percentages. I mean, they've got a much better chance, courtesy of Money Puck, than do the Chicago Blackhawks, than do the Dallas Stars, of making these playoffs. But making the playoffs means you're just going to get manhandled by Tampa in 5 or 6 games. And then if you don't act at the trade deadline, then you aren't making the necessary moves to start transitioning this team into the next phase of whatever it's going to be, because making the playoffs ahead of a broken Dallas team and a bad Chicago team and a Columbus team that's going to fire its coach does not mean everything's fixed.
Yep. And I would say this, I feel like the bad guy here, right? Like I'm the afternoon drive host of the Predators flagship station show, and I said today, hey, I didn't see this. I did not see the Predators getting themselves back into playoff contention. I'm with you. I mean, they'll get crushed by Tampa. But I feel like the bad guy here, Greg, because I look at Mikael Granlund and I say, hey, you traded a first-round pick in Kevin Fiala in order to get him. This time last year at the trade deadline, he had no value. Now Toronto is desperate for him. They're going to give you a second-round pick. Why would you hold on to Mikael Granlund when he's going to leave at the end of the year anyways? You're going to get nothing in return. And even if he's on your team, you're not going to compete with Tampa Bay. I feel like the bad guy here, telling the players, telling the fans, telling the organization that I'm with you, it does kind of feel all for naught.
It does, and again, like, it's unfortunately just the way of the world right now. I mean, if they were in the Central Division as per usual, it'd be Colorado we're talking about, or another team. In this case, it's Tampa, and they're real good, and unless things change dramatically with the Florida Panthers now that Ekblad's out and they plummet and you can avoid Tampa, you're still looking at Carolina. I mean, you're still looking at that situation of 2 of the best teams in the NHL are headlining this division. But the biggest issue, like you said, is that it's where you want this team to be. And where you want this team to be is, better and reloading and managing their assets correctly. And you look at the St. Louis Blues a few years ago when they were still very much in a playoff hunt. They trade Paul Stastny to the Winnipeg Jets, and they do so because they knew that they weren't going to bring him back. He was going to leave. But they made the aggressive move to trade what was one of their top 2 centers at the deadline. And it's a tough call, but you had to make it. In the case of Ekholm, for example, there's no greater commodity at this trade deadline other than obviously centers, because that's always the greatest commodity, than a defensive defenseman. And to blow the opportunity to get maximum value for this guy at a time when it's like, him, Alex Goligoski, maybe Josh Manson, and a few others that are available to teams that are looking to overpay for that defensive defenseman, the Flyers being one of them, Boston maybe being another, you got to strike while the iron's hot. And then we all know with the expansion draft looming, who even knows what the future holds for Ekholm. So I don't know. I understand the surge up the standings is giving people brain worms, but you still have to get the business done and make the deals that you got to make at the deadline.
Greg Wyshynski's our guest, ESPN. So this is what I'm just going to tell you what I think happens, not what I want to happen, but just kind of knowing the Predators. I think Ekholm stays past the deadline. I think they're going to try to work out a deal moving on from Ellis in the offseason. I think Ekholm stays, Forsberg stays, Poyle stays at the end of the year. I think Granlund, Haula, Cousins, whatever, run-of-the-mill guy you can get a 4th-round pick for to send over to some competitor, that will happen before the deadline. I think they will move on from Granlund. But I think Ekholm stays. I think Forsberg stays. I think Ellis stays for now. And I think Poyle stays. If that plays out, would you say that's a good move by the Predators, a good position to put themselves in? Or do you think it'd be a missed opportunity?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't get rid of Forsberg at all. I've been baffled by this notion of what is essentially part of the solution being tossed in with parts of the problem. I don't get it. I think he's a real good player. I think he's someone you keep around and build around. Now, when you say Poile stays, in what capacity does he stay? That's the question. Does he stay as the general manager? Does he stay as president of hockey operations and someone comes in under him to change the course of the team, someone who isn't his blood relative? That's the real question for me. Because I was talking to some people in the last week. There is a perception that this is going to be David Poile's last rodeo as general manager, but there is a split in perception as to what the next step is. Does he get kicked upstairs? Does he leave the organization? I think that's the debate that's happening outside of Nashville right now, but it could all be for naught because, like you said, it could be a situation, 56-game anomaly of a season. They end up being a playoff team. They could easily come back with the same general manager next year, give him a full 82, and then see where he stands after that. But for me, the more interesting thing is, like, what is the next step for David Poile? Is it sort of the situation we saw in New Jersey where Lou Lamoriello was kicked upstairs and Ray Shero became the general manager, and then Lou was gone off to the Toronto Maple Leafs in short order after that? Or is it a situation where Poile would be happy to just kind of be what Paul Holmgren was with the Flyers, which is just be upstairs, be with the organization, and then allow someone else to kind of manage the day-to-day and plot the new course for the organization? I don't know. It's totally up to him.
So what's crazy is I don't know what they think either. Like, I'm being dead serious with you. My gut tells me that if things had gone the way they were, Greg, that they would have probably done what you suggested, which is kick Poile upstairs, which I would have been against. I mean, to me, either he's the general manager and the president of hockey operations and he makes the call on everything, or he's not here anymore because his shadow over the next guy, if he's there, I think that will be a hindrance. But I think that that's what they would have done, is they would have kicked him upstairs. Now, I think if the season were to end today and the Predators are either in or right out, I think they'll say, to your point, we think David deserves another chance. And that's where, I guess, to me, the two things, I think they probably should trade Ekholm. I think the Ellis thing is a smokescreen, but I also think they probably need somebody new in that position, at general manager, whatever you want to call it, director of who picks the players and the coach. I think they need somebody new in there, and that's where I look at this run. And I'm glad they're doing it, and I think they're playing hard, and it's entertaining. But, Greg, there's a part of me that sits there and says, this could, kind of set them back for what they really probably need to do.
Yeah, which is to get to the next phase. I mean, they had a nice run with this group. It made the Cup final. I mean, I think one of the great what-ifs in the last 6 or 7 years is, what if Johansson doesn't get hurt? Then what happens in that final? Might have a completely different conversation about that team. But I like the idea of a set of fresh eyes coming in and taking a look at this roster. And I like the idea of starting to kind of move out pieces and transition to whatever this team is going to be as some of the parts of this roster get older or, eventually leave in the next couple of years in the case of Pekka. I think it has to happen. And I like the idea of somebody from the outside coming in and doing it. But, as well as I, the problem with this organization and making any decision like this is, half the city owns the team. Like, there's a billion owners.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So if half of them are like, David Poile deserves to be the general manager for a full 82-game season, and half of them are like, hey, thanks for the time and service. Here's your gold watch. Now you're in the front office. What are you going to do? Who wins out? Who holds sway in that group when you have so many people calling the shots? It's not the monolithic thing that you see with other teams. And I do wonder at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that have been around this organization for a long time that are probably saying we owe David Poile the respect to kick him upstairs versus kick him out of the organization.
Greg Wyshynski's our guest. What would you say to Predator fans who say they probably will get crushed by Tampa if they make the playoffs, but everybody said that in 2017 about Chicago. Everybody said that in 2019 for Columbus when they had to play Tampa and they swept them. Everybody said that about the Blues when they made their run in 2019 onto the Cup. What would you say to that? Because that's what I hear from the people that do want to believe in this team.
Sure. No, it's fine. I mean, everybody remembers Columbus won the Cup that year, right? After they swept Tampa. Oh, wait. No, they didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to pull some surprises. You're going to be able to make some noise. The bottom line is that if you think that this Nashville team is currently constituted can beat the Hurricanes, the Lightning, the winner of Colorado and Vegas, and or the Toronto Maple Leafs, all right, more power to you. I don't think they can. I think this team needs to get better in a lot of different areas, get younger, and they need to start flipping some of these assets for things that can help them in the future. Because the run for this team was great. It's the best time I think for this organization in its history. And if you want the good times to keep rolling, you've got to be able to change on the fly. And I'm not saying tear it all down. I'm not one of these people. It's like trade Forsberg. I don't think that's the solution. I think there are some players in this roster and some talents on this team. One, that you can't move, and then two that are going to be part of whatever the next phase is going to be. And I think Forsberg's one of them. I just think that those wheels have to start turning, and you can't allow delusion to set in just because you happen to be better than three really bad teams this year and sneak into the playoffs.
Last one for you, Greg Wyshynski, our guest. I would say that I don't even know the answer to this question, and I cover this team every day. What would be something that happens that you would say, okay, now I do believe? Because 62% of the fans last week said sell. Now I'm hearing a lot more, hey, stand pat, see where this goes. If they win some more games, these fans are going to think they're the St. Louis Blues of 2019. What would you have to see from the Predators before you say, you know what? Maybe they've totally turned it around and John Hines has something special.
How many lines would you say are working right now on this team? Like playing above expectation?
One.
Right. So you need at least three. If you give me three lines that are playing as well as like do we disparage them to call them the checking line? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's beyond the pale or whatever. Sometimes people get offended by that. But if you have two other lines that are playing that well, then maybe you have an argument that you can match the depth of a Carolina or a Tampa. But when you got one line going, and it ain't even your best line on paper, what are you doing, right? So if you're looking for some sort of scientific test, you can apply to the Nashville Predators and say they could be a team that outkicks their coverage, then that might be it. Give me three lines that are playing as well as the one line is right now, and then maybe we could have a conversation about them being a dark horse underdog, Dallas Stars of 2020 bubble surprise team. But until that happens, I can't really get excited about them.
Yeah, Greg Wyshynski, ESPN. Greg, I could go on with you for hours and hours on this because I think we kind of see eye to eye about it, but good stuff as always. Thanks for joining us, Greg.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yep, Greg Wyshynski. And, when he talks about how many lines the Predators have going, I'm saying that second line right now is going, that line with Granlund and Yarncroke and, John Hines moves the lines up and down so much it's hard to tell. But, right now I think they got a handful of players that are playing well. I think they got Tolvanen. I think they got Granlund. I think they got Yarncroke. I think those guys are playing really, really well. And to me, I say you got to trade some of those guys when those guys are playing really, really well. I got a reaction to what Greg said. I want to get to that next. We'll get to your text on the Predators. Plus, major NFL story, and I literally cannot believe what I'm hearing. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. Hey, I do want to tell the fine folks out there, because we are always hooking you up with all the Pred stuff and everything that's going on and everything that's new, that tune into Robbie and Rex Road every weekday morning at 8:45 when the Predators have a weekday game this season for your chance to participate in Pred's Pick to Click, and you can win a prize pack. Brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka. Your next chance to participate is tomorrow morning. Stillman Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
proud of the guys. I think, we came in and we've worked really hard. We've had a lot of adversity throughout the year, but I think when you look, as we've continued to talk about from the start of the road trip, through now, there's just a lot of consistency to the way that we want to play. Guys have really worked hard and battled to put ourselves in position this weekend to try to close the gap. And it was 2 hard-fought games. Chicago's a good team. They're difficult to play against, but I really like just the focus level, the grittiness, the work ethic that we play with, and the commitment to play the game that we need to play to have success. Guys do it. And I think that's a tribute to the players.
There you go. That was John Hines, coach of the Predators, talking about, hey, tribute to the guys. The things we've been preaching, they're doing. I got to give Hines credit. I have said, to me, I thought when things were bad, I was told by a source that they were not going to fire John Hines this season, that he was going to coach through the 2021 season. But they did not say, whether that source did not know, whether or not Hines would be coaching for next year. And I have said on the show for about the last 3 weeks, Hines has done enough with this group in getting them to believe and getting them to do what he's saying that I think Hines has certainly deserved, that he has earned himself next season, even if the general manager's not the same. And I stand by that. Greg Wyshynski, ESPN, he was on the show last segment, and he is not buying whatsoever the idea that even if the Predators make the playoffs, they have any shot at beating Tampa Bay. JD texts into the text line, which is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and JD says, as the GM would say, get me to the playoffs, baby. I lean with Greg Wyshynski here. I feel like this isn't like it was when I was in high school. This isn't like it was when the Predators never made the playoffs. Even when I was in college and making the playoffs was a big deal for the Predators. And maybe we're just spoiled because we've seen them go to the Cup final. We've seen them be a competitor. We've seen them go to the second round. We've seen them go to the second round and us not even feel good about it after they get to the second round. I remember when they beat Anaheim in 2011 to force the second round with Vancouver, and it was like the greatest thing that ever happened around here. Can you believe the Predators are in the second round? Then they get to the second round against Winnipeg, they lose, and we're all sitting there saying, like, the second round? What? So Greg Wyshynski thinks they have no chance at beating Tampa Bay. I agree. Let's go around the room. Ian? Do you agree with Greg Wyshynski that even and I am putting you on the spot here, and I'm sorry for doing that.
That's okay.
But do you agree with Greg Wyshynski that even if this team does make the playoffs, and they do so over, as he said, a broken Dallas team and a bad Chicago team, that it really doesn't mean much because you're going to get whacked by Tampa Bay?
Well, in general, I would agree with that, but we don't know for sure that Tampa will win the division. They are only ahead 1 point, and Carolina has a game in hand. And I'm also not convinced Tampa will repeat this year. Not to say that the Preds would beat them in a series, which they probably would not. But, yeah. No, probably not.
But you are kind of it sounds to me like you're much more of the mindset of, hey, if you make the playoffs in this sport, anything can happen. Let's not poo-poo making the playoffs. That's what I feel like you're saying.
Especially in the first round. It's one thing to go on a cup run, and take down Carolina and Tampa or Florida, although Florida just lost Ekblad. And then in the West, I do think Vegas and Colorado would be a very difficult task as well. So just to get past the first round, I'm not sure how much that's worth it, but anybody has a chance in one round.
Sure. So I'm with Wyshynski. I don't look at the idea of playing Tampa. I don't look at that, and I don't feel good about it. Benjamin Allbright, NFL Insider, is going to join us for our draft outlooks coming up next. Major draft trade on Friday. We broke it down at length, and it's the San Francisco moving up to number 3. So San Francisco moves from, I think, 12 to 3, and then Miami moves back from 12 to 6, and now the whole story's about, okay, what about Jimmy, and what about who they're going to pick? Well, we know they're not going to pick Trevor Lawrence. He's going at 1 to Jacksonville. Urban Meyer basically said as much. It feels almost certain Zach Wilson goes number 2 out of BYU to the Jets. And as Mike Tannenbaum pointed out on ESPN, they didn't attend Trey Lance's pro day, the 49ers didn't, and he wouldn't draft Trey Lance with the 3rd overall pick, which now makes it a little concerning about what San Francisco might do. Here's what Tannenbaum said.
And one thing that I think bears noting here, which is I have sat in that seat for 2 different teams. I think it's unbelievable to trade up 2 1s and a 3 for a quarterback in Trey Lance that started 1 game this year. I love Trey Lance. I think he has a chance to be really special. But you talking about a risk and putting all your chips in the middle of the table, I think it's inconceivable that they would trade up so much draft capital for a quarterback that started 1 game.
Okay, so take out Trey Lance and take out the fact that they're not going to Justin Fields' pro day, which means they're going to take Mac Jones. I mean, that's at least that. Now, maybe they're smoke screening everybody, but it feels like they're going to take Mac Jones. That's the way. Again, if I had told you a week ago Mac Jones goes 3rd overall, you would have called me crazy. It feels like they're doing all of this for Mac Jones. And I like Mac Jones fine, but like, really? The 3rd overall pick. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not one of those crazies, but it sounds like they keep going on record and saying, Jimmy's going to be our quarterback, and basically admitting today, Kyle Shanahan, that they're probably going to take Mac Jones 3rd overall. So they're going to take Mac Jones 3rd overall, sit him on the bench behind Jimmy G, and then get nothing ultimately for Jimmy G. That doesn't make any sense to me unless they're trying to smokescreen something else, which I still think in my back pocket is what I thought on Friday, my gut. Jimmy to New England for 15 and 3 to the Jets for Zach Wilson. That's the only thing I can think of. And they're trying to sell all of us that they just love Mac Jones and that's why they're doing it, and it's to increase Jimmy's leverage. Because I cannot believe San Francisco will be trading 3 first-round picks to move up and draft Mac Jones, who they probably could have moved with Atlanta at 4-4. They probably could have moved to Cincinnati at 5-4. They probably could have moved to Philadelphia at 6-4. I mean, that's all I feel. Maybe the league loves Mac Jones. I don't know. Benjamin Allbright will join us next. NFL insider out in Denver. We'll get his thoughts on the big trade. We'll get his thoughts also. The Titans are apparently out at Miami's pro day, so a lot of guys there the Titans could be interested in. That's coming up next. Stillman Company right here. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game, streaming on the Game Nashville app, streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, all those things. So thank you for joining us, both visually and audio. But pro days are among us. We had a big trade in the NFL. The 49ers are telling us one thing. I'm not sure I can buy it. Like I said, Mac Jones at 3? Mac Jones at 3? I don't know about that. Meanwhile, Miami's pro day is today as well, and John Robinson is there. They've got 2 pass rushing prospects, Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau. Perhaps the Titans could be in on them. Benjamin Allbright joins us now. NFL insider. You can hear him on the Broncos flagship station, KOA in Denver. And by the way, guy knows his stuff. And so I want to start with this, Ben. I look at that trade Friday, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I saw it, and I thought, okay, clearly something's up. Like maybe they San Francisco flips Jimmy to New England, and then they take that 15th overall pick, and they flip it over to the Jets, and they take Zach Wilson. And now it feels like the truth is, the way they're telling it, Jimmy stays, and they go Mac Jones at 3. You're plugged in. What are you hearing?
Well, as soon as you saw the trade, and you kind of knew that was coming because San Francisco had been eyeballing quarterbacks all off season. They engaged with the Jets and talks on Sam Darnold. They've gone back and forth about a bunch of different things. Here's the thing, is that I happen to know that staff has Zach Wilson as the best quarterback in this draft. So them getting up to 3 might be a precursor to another move. The problem is they would be trying to work with another staff that already knows everything about them because they were with them last year. Everybody forgets the New York Jets coaching staff, Robert Saleh and LaFleur, those guys are all Niners last year. So, they've got high grades on Wilson as well. Probably they're number 1 or number 2 in this class. And, it'd be tough, I think, for San Francisco to be able to get from 3 to 2. So I think that they are satisfied with probably 3 different players, and that's why they're sitting there where they are. As for keeping Garoppolo, I don't think they ultimately will. I can't see that happening. It's a little bit different than a Pat Mahomes, Alex Smith, or a Ryan Fitzpatrick type situation. You got to have a certain kind of mental makeup to be the veteran that's able to be the mentor for the upcoming quarterback. And Jimmy Garoppolo is not that guy.
Do you think New England would deal the 15th overall pick for Jimmy, knowing that they probably can't get Mac Jones sitting at 15 and knowing that Cam is not the guy?
I don't know if pick 15 would do it. I imagine there'd be some kind of pick swap in there. I think 15's a little rich for New England, but yes, they've inquired about Garoppolo. They know that Cam isn't the guy, and you could tell by the financial commitment they didn't make to him that that he's not. So, my gut says that Garoppolo winds back in New England, but it could be one of those things where they can't reach an agreement. I know New England had been heavily pursuing Marcus Mariota for a while, and then the Raiders ultimately restructured and kept him.
Which is funny for a lot of us around here. I thought that Marcus was surely going to get out of his deal and take that. Benjamin Albright's our guest. By the way, our draft outlooks are brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans and Apple Collision Centers. John Robinson's in Miami today, Titans general manager. He is looking probably at Jalen Phillips, looking at Gregory Rousseau. We've heard about the connections with all these pass rushers. Then they signed Bud Dupree. Now corner is a possibility. Wide receiver is a possibility. When it comes to the Titans, what do you hear? And how much information is really out there about the Titans? How much information have the Titans put out there for people to hear?
Well, they used to be one of the tightest-lipped organizations, and then I kind of had an in down there for a couple of seasons. Now that in is gone, and I guess I'm sort of giving it away. But I think that everybody around the league expects the Titans to be on an edge rusher or a corner in the first round. I don't think the people I've talked to don't expect them to be on a receiver. So that's how I look at that, and I would say that they were down there looking at Rousseau, whose testing was a little less than probably what they want. I know the Titans have spoken with Osai out of Texas quite a few times, so he's somebody that a lot of people have kind of drawn the dots to around the league that I talk to.
What do you make of that position, that pass rushing group? We've had people that say maybe Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia would be the best fit for the Titans. People that have said that Rousseau would be the best fit, but no way he gets to 22. They've said Jalen Phillips at Miami might be the best fit. You brought up Joseph Asai, whose name we haven't really heard much here, perhaps maybe more talked in the second round than the first. But if you kind of had to say, okay, this guy would be the best fit for the Titans at that position, who would you say it probably is?
Well, Rousseau's not going to get there, but he would be one that I would like. The other Miami edge rusher he's a great player, but he's got some other issues going on there, including medical stuff. So that's kind of the problem there. He's much more athletic. Like I said, Osai, I think Osai is a great fit there. I think the Titans are kind of in a luxury position though after getting Dupree, is that you can kind of let the board come to you. Let that draft play itself out, and one or the other, one edge rusher or one of those premier three corners, I think probably falls in their lap there, and then you just get to get a great pick because everybody was thirsty for quarterbacks early on in this draft.
What do you think of the corners? J.C. Horn as someone that consistently comes up, and I just think that, let's say, for example, Daniel Jeremiah ranks J.C. Horn as the 21st best player in this class. The Titans will have the 22nd pick. If you're the 21st player in the draft, but you're a corner, you go at 15 or 16. You go at 14. You go before 21 because of the need. What do you think of those three corners and the odds that they get to the Titans at 22?
Well, I can tell you here in Denver, they've kind of looked at the corner position a little bit. They ultimately filled most of it out in free agency, but they've been looking at the draft. So the expectation here is that, Pat Surtain and J.C. Horn will be CB1 and CB2, depending on which team gets there. Probably Dallas will be the first one to take one. And then, Caleb Farley's somewhere down the way. Farley's got some medical red flags. He's obviously a little more raw, got some other things going on. But, I think one of those three players will probably be there for the Titans. And, if you're not looking to the edge rush, one of those guys could be right there, right for the taking.
What do you think about wide receiver? Benjamin Allbright's our guest, NFL insider in Denver, covers – I guess you cover the Broncos, but you are literally all over the place. What do you make of wide receivers in this draft? Because we were told last year, hey, this might be the best wide receiver draft in decades, and now we're told this wide receiver draft might be a tick below or as good as last year's. Corey Davis gone, Josh Reynolds in. I like the signing, but they still need a slot receiver. What do you think about receiver in this year's draft?
Well, there's plenty of talent. It's always funny how this year is the year, and then everything. They're saying this year's the best quarterback draft in forever, and then I promise you they'll be saying the same thing next year because next year's class actually is better. But as far as the receiver stuff goes, there's some good ones. Chase and Smith and Waddle kind of headline the class a little bit, but there's some great players down there below them. I think Bateman, is a fantastic player. He's not getting enough run in this class, and if you need a slot guy, boy, you can find in that third through fifth round kind of sweet spot. There's about 8 or 9 names I think in there that you could find. You don't have to spend a premium pick on a receiver. You can let one come to you. Receivers are a lot easier to find in the NFL draft now because you got colleges that mostly operate out of 4 wide receiver sets and 5 wide receiver sets, and so they're prepping these guys. You're getting a lot of reps at the collegiate level, and so there's a lot more of them prepared to play. Earlier. You can find good wide receivers deeper in the draft than you used to be able to.
What do you make? The ESPN put out their post-free agency power rankings. They have the Titans ranked 8th in those power rankings. I think that's a little too rich. I think they lost a lot, this past season. I thought that they were kind of on the decline at the end of the season. How do you feel about kind of that ranking and how important the draft will be for this Titans team and where they sit, not just in the AFC, but maybe overall in the league?
Well, I agree with you. I think they lost a lot. I think that is a little rich, and I like the Titans. I'm a huge Ryan Tannehill fan, always will be, and he's such a good guy. It's good to see him succeed. After the rough start to the career and all that. I think losing your OC, parts of your staff, and then losing players, all that turnover on the defensive and offensive side of the football is going to be an adjustment. And I would not be surprised to see if the Titans maybe started a little slower in the coming season and then finish strong. As opposed to the way it was kind of last year. So, I think if you're a Titans fan, stay patient because early on in the season, you're probably going to have a bunch of guys and it's team that's trying to get used to the new staff and the new on the offensive side and the new players that they have. And I think that may be some growing pains there.
What do you make of kind of the most intriguing team early in the draft this year? I mean, obviously, other than San Francisco right now, because who knows what's going to happen there. But as that first round plays out, what team are you maybe hearing could kind of throw the board for a loop next month?
Well, Cincinnati. I know a lot of people have them on Penny Sewell, but I'm not 100% sure that's a pick there. You could see Pitts, you could see Slater. So there's a couple of, or you could even see Jamar Chase, reunite him with Joe Burrow. So there's several picks there, I think, with Cincinnati that kind of start to make the board veer a little bit. And then Miami, I think a lot of people think they're on the pass catcher there. Which one that is depends, I guess, on who falls in their lap. But I think that's the part where the draft really starts to get interesting. I think most people know Detroit's kind of on Parsons, and Carolina would love to get a quarterback if whatever that fifth quarterback is there. And then you got Denver, and Denver's a prime trade back candidate. So you could see a team like Minnesota move up. You could see a team like New England move up. There are several options there. So I think right around those first, that 5, 6, 7 spot in the draft, that's really, for me, the sweet spot where things start to get interesting.
Benjamin Allbright's our guest, NFL insider. So I'm going to put it to you like this. If you're sitting there looking at the board and you're calling around teams, as soon as San Francisco on Friday makes that trade to move to number 3, and all the first rounders they gave up, what's everybody else in the league saying about that? Not what San Francisco's saying or what they're going to do, but what are the other teams that see 3 first-round picks and moving from 12 to 3 and going after a quarterback when you were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago with Jimmy G as your quarterback? What are they telling you?
Well, it's not it's a pretty open secret around the league that internally that staff blames that Super Bowl loss on Jimmy Garoppolo, and not just the missed post pass to Emmanuel Sanders. In fact, that he went like 3 of 11 in the fourth quarter with interception, a 4th down sack, things like that. There was a lot of missed throws in that game where he could have just put the game away if he'd let the offense get another first down. They didn't do it. So internally they felt like they were kind of held back by that, and they've wanted to improve the position. They looked around a little bit last year, weren't able to do it, and so this year they made a big commitment to that. I think that around the league it's interesting because as the trade was happening, the people that I were talking to thought it was going to be for Fields or Lance, specifically Trey Lance, and now you get a bunch of media pushback saying Mac Jones, and it's interesting to me, because last thing I'd heard from anybody out there was that it was probably Trey Lance. So they're the ones that's kind of got everybody kind of mystified as to what they're going to do there at 3 with which of those 3 quarterbacks.
Yep, Benjamin Allbright. He's in Denver. He's on Twitter. I mean, the guy breaks as much news as almost anybody out there who doesn't just get it straight scooped from agent to source. So with that, Benjamin Allbright, thank you so much, Ben. We'll check in closer to the draft.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yep, Benjamin Allbright joining us on the program. And again, our draft outlooks on the program brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans and Apple Collision Centers. Ian, that was kind of a curveball. Joseph Asai, I mean, we've talked about it like once. We had, I think, somebody called in on the TD Power Hour, and they asked TD, hey, what do you think about Joseph Asai? And TD said he didn't really like him that much, breaking down the tape. As far as the first round, I haven't heard much of it, but that was the one name he kept bringing up, saying that he's hearing about with the Titans.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard that name mentioned too much with the Titans, at least locally, So good to have a different perspective on that.
So I cannot get over the San Francisco trade. And I will say this. I agree with Allbright from the standpoint that it feels to me like that staff blames Jimmy Garoppolo for why they lost that Super Bowl. And maybe they're right. I struggle with this, right? Which is the guru offensive coaches always seem to think they're holier than thou. Ken Wisenhunt never thought he was the problem when he was the coach here. He was terrible. Sean McVay loses the Super Bowl. He blames Jared Goff. Sends him away. Trades first-round picks to get rid of him. Now we're hearing Kyle Shanahan.
Don't forget your boy in Green Bay.
Oh, my God. I mean, with Green Bay. I can't wait.
Matt LaFleur and his Deion Lewis, Derrick Henry love.
I cannot wait until the day that Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay and Matt LaFleur is stuck without Aaron Rodgers at quarterback and is exposed. Because I'll tell you, the NFC title game proved something to me. I felt like I was just getting crushed for all my anti-LaFleur rhetoric for all those years. And then the NFC title game, LaFleur doesn't try to score a touchdown on 4th down. LaFleur lets his defense get back out there, give up a touchdown. I felt so much better after that all happened. But yes, they like to blame the quarterback. The offensive guru coach likes to blame the quarterback. And coming up next, there's one element I was thinking about today about this San Francisco trade. The reason I asked Benjamin Allbright about what they were saying in the league about the trade, because I have a feeling about this trade. I want you to think about it. I want you to go through my eyes and then tell me that it's not one of the stupider trades you've seen. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. We're live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. ESPN 1025 The Game is kicking off every weekend with free beer. Who doesn't love free beer? Tune in all day Friday for your chance to win a $25 gift card from Bavarian Beer House located at the Opry Mills Mall. Stillman Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game.
Well, look, you've been around a bunch of talented guys, your career at Alabama. And as we assess this quarterback class of draft prospects, some seriously talented dudes in this group as well. Where do you feel like your skill set fits in with some of these top guys that we're going to hear their names called with yours on April 29th?
Yeah, I think it's a really good QB class, and I try not to pay too much attention to it and just focus on myself. But there's some ballers out there, and I've got a chance to watch a lot of their tape, and they're great players. But I'm a different player. I just I do what I'm supposed to do my job, and do it to the best of my ability. So I always say, if you want me to throw the bubble pass, I'll throw the bubble pass. If you want me to hit it deep, I'll hit it deep. So I'm just going to do what the coach tells me and execute the offense.
That was Mac Jones at Alabama's Pro Day last week. So that led me to a lot of confusion, Ian, when I was hearing all this stuff about, hey, this week Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to Alabama's Pro Day to see Mac Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, wait a minute, wasn't that last week? Like, wasn't that Alabama's Pro Day last week? Like, did they have a media Pro Day and now they're going to have regular Pro Day? Like, what's going on? Apparently, Alabama's going to have a second Pro Day. And that's where Jalen Waddle's expected to compete, and that's where Najee Harris is expected to compete, and I am just thrown off.
Well, when you're Alabama, you can have as many pro days as you'd like.
You know what? The SEC Network and NFL Network will probably take that. But Mike Tannenbaum, former general manager, this is the thing. The idea that San Francisco would move up to 3 to take Mac Jones makes no sense to anybody, except Tannenbaum's kind of been hinting about Mac Jones for a little while. This was Tannenbaum today talking about clearly he thinks that's where they're headed as far as the 3rd overall pick for San Francisco is concerned.
Tomorrow there's a pro day at both Alabama, and reportedly both John Lynch, the general manager of the 49ers, and Kyle Shanahan are going to be in Tuscaloosa to watch Mac Jones throw instead of Justin Fields at Ohio State. And again, that's not necessarily outcome determinative, but I think it's a very strong signal of which way they're leaning. And I do agree with Dan that Mac Jones is a perfect fit with Kyle Shanahan.
And so he's saying, hey, I think it's a perfect fit at 3. And you're thinking, wait a minute, where is all this coming from? Like, where is all of this Mac Jones? I mean, we thought Mac Jones at 15 to the Patriots. We thought that was probably what was most likely. Oh, he won't get past 15. He might be the 22nd best player, but he won't get past 15. Now it's 3. But Tannenbaum has been hinting at this. This is what he said March 1st on ESPN when it was discussed about where Mac Jones could possibly go.
Mac Jones, University of Alabama, his floor is number 8. Carolina Panthers. Go back to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Matt Rule loved him. It's no secret they're looking for a quarterback. So Mac Jones' floor in this year's draft is number 8. A lot of speculation about New England. If New England, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, if they have conversations and that goes well, New England's going to have to get above 8 to go get Mac Jones.
So, Ian, that kind of sounds like when Floyd would tip us off to the fact that he didn't like Mariota. It kind of feels like that's Tannenbaum's way of telling you that he loves Mac Jones.
That he's going to be that high. And
Yes.
if you want to get him, you have to move up.
Yes.
Maybe he was hearing that, hey, he could be closer to a top 5 guy than we think.
I just don't feel it. Like, I just don't see it. I don't get it. Like, how all of a sudden is Mac Jones coming out of nowhere? But one question I would have, I still think it's stupid. I mean, even if it was for Trey Lance or Justin Fields, or I still think 3 first-round picks to move up to number 3 to draft the 3rd best quarterback, not the 3rd best player, but the 3rd best quarterback of a draft. I don't think it's smart. And I will explain to you a situation where I would say if some team did this, it would be one of the dumbest moves they've ever made. Do you remember when the Titans took Marcus Mariota 2nd overall? That year, there was a long discussion about whether it was Winston or Mariota. Now, I always felt like Winston was the better quarterback, and I always thought Winston was going to go number 1. I actually thought Jameis Winston was going to be good in the NFL. So if I were to make any big mistakes, that would be the mistake I made. But what if one team absolutely loved Mariota? And I'm sure some team did. Mike Mayock, who's now running the Raiders with John Gruden, Mayock loved Mariota on television. Somebody out there probably loved Marcus. They just couldn't get there. They could not get to number 2. Remember Chip Kelly? There was a lot of talk that Kelly was offering like his 1st, 2nd, and 3 players off the roster to move up to number 2 to get Mariota.
When Chip was at Philly, yeah.
Yeah, and that the Titans said no. But let's just say that Chip Kelly, and I don't know where he was picking, but I think he made the playoffs in 2014, or they were pretty good in 2014. So I don't think they were moving from 12 to 2. So it would have cost more than what the 49ers traded. But what if the Eagles, or let's just say, what if the Titans? What if the Titans had traded for that number 2 pick to get Mariota instead of being bad and using the pick on Mariota? So that they had dealt their 2015, their 2016, and their 2017 ones to whomever to move to number 2 and take Mariota. They were the worst team in the league in 2015. So that 2016 number 1 is the number 1 pick in the draft. That pick, which ended up being Jared Goff, was traded to the Rams for Jack Conklin, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Derrick Henry. That is what San Francisco, in theory, could be trading to to Miami to get up there. And we know Miami, we know how they trade back. So if San Francisco's bad this year because Jimmy G doesn't want to be there, forces his way out, Mac Jones goes in, isn't any good, they have the same problems they've had the last couple of years. If San Francisco's in that spot, that pick goes to Miami. That you do remember that even though they made the Super Bowl a couple years ago, that same year they picked second in the draft. Then the pick that became Adoree Jackson in 2017, that would have gone to whatever team the Titans traded for to go to second and pick Mariota. And all you would have gotten out of it was Mariota. And Mac Jones or Trey Lance or Justin Fields, they were not even on the same footing of draft prospect as Mariota was. Mariota was the Heisman Trophy winner. Mariota was very clearly going number 2 in this draft. The question was, were the Titans taking him or was somebody else? Now, Trevor Maddich, who will be on the show tomorrow, Trevor has said for eons that he does not believe in taking a quarterback high in the draft. And every time I hear that, I just kind of roll my eyes. And I think, Trev, I love you, but come on now. Like, that's how most quarterbacks are gotten, is by taking them early in the draft. But 3 first-round picks to move up there? Again, if Jimmy doesn't want to be there, and the 49ers are telling us that they're going to draft Mac Jones with the 3rd overall pick and that Jimmy's going to be the starter this year, and not one person I've talked to believes that's what's going to happen. But let's just say it does. Or let's say Jimmy gets his way out. Now Mac Jones is a starter. 49ers are bad again, which would be 4 of the last 5 seasons that they've been bad. Probably even further if you wanted to go back. The Super Bowl season might be an aberration. You could have the 3rd overall pick in next year's draft and be giving it away. The Texans own this pick that's going to San Francisco via the Dolphins. But they got greedy and they traded it away for a left tackle. They could have had 3 number 1s. Instead, they have Laramie Tunsil. I look at this and I laugh because I just think it's crazy. Like, I just think it's wild that San Francisco did this, and I don't feel like I'm hearing enough. I don't feel like I'm hearing enough from people saying, whoa, 3 first-round picks to go up and get that quarterback. I feel like everybody's saying, hey, man, you got to trade up the picks in order to get the quarterback. No, the Kansas City Chiefs, when they circled their quarterback, they traded 1 pick to go up and get there. I mean, I guess technically 2, their own and next year's, to go up and get Patrick Mahomes. Tampa Bay signed theirs in free agency. Green Bay drafted theirs in the late 1st round. Seattle drafted theirs in the 3rd round. Those are the best quarterbacks in the league right now. I mean, those are the guy that's moving up to go to number 2, they're not the best quarterbacks in the league right now. So, I don't know. I think this is crazy. You want to convince me that Atlanta will take a quarterback at 4 and then Matt Ryan will start and then he'll stay on the bench and that'll work out? Fine. You're telling me you're going to trade 3 first-round picks. You're going to draft Mac Jones in the 1st round. You're not going to flip Garoppolo to get one of those picks back. And I'll just say this. What if a team had done that for Mariota? They would have been terrible. They would have lost the number 1 pick in the draft. They never would have gotten Derrick Henry. They'd all be fired. That's how it works. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, It's odd. The whole feeling about how good are the Titans, where should the Titans be, how good will the Titans be this season, I don't feel like I hear anybody talking about the Titans. Anybody around the country, even locally, I think there's some pessimism as to what this team may be. And yet somebody's very high on them. Is it a good idea? We'll get to that coming up next. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. You know I love those guys. Hiller is giving away a free month of vacations for you and your family this month. With every purchase of a new whole home generator or select new HVAC systems, Hiller is giving you a free week-long vacation. With every purchase of a new tankless water heater, Hiller is giving you a free weekend-long vacation. That's 4 days. And they'll pay for your gas with a $100 gas card. Choose from over 400 Marriott, Wyndham, Hilton, or Hyatt hotel properties. Take advantage of this unbelievable deal while you can. These deals are only available for a limited time, so make sure you schedule them today. You can do that by visiting happyhiller.com for all of the details. Again, they end this month, so get it figured out now. As always, happy you'll be here. The service is free. Hiller takes great care of my home, and I promise you that they can take great care of your home as well. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporter of the Vols and the Preds. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Do you feel right now your roster is better than it was a year ago coming off the AFC Championship game? And based off that answer, how much pressure do you feel personally going into this offseason to be better in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of players that took steps in the right direction. We won 11 games this past year, won the division for the first time in a long time. Guys that improved, but we got to continue to add players to the team. That's what it's about. We got to continue to add guys that are going to be about what that are about what we're about. As people, as football players, and guys that can have an impact on the game. In whatever role it is. You've got some of the guys that are the premium players. And you've got some guys that pitch in there and they're role players and they're good players for you. And we've got to continue to find guys that love ball. That's the one thing that we want is guys that love ball, guys that want to be pro football players, not guys that just put pro football player as their hashtag on their Instagram or their Snapchat or their Twitters. Like guys that actually want to play the game of pro football because it's a strain. Pro football is hard. And you've got to really love football and want to do it, and that's more than just putting it on your Twitter as your occupation.
There's John Robinson about a month and a half ago. Ian, by the way, I never really thought about that clip. Who do you think that was a shot at? Clearly, that's a shot at somebody. I mean, is it Isaiah Wilson? I don't know.
Could be Wilson. Could be Beasley. Could be a couple of guys. Well, mostly I would think Wilson and Beasley off the top of my head, who I can think of.
Man, the more I think about that clip, the more uncomfortable I find that to be. I mean, hey, we want guys who love football. Not just say love football, not just put it on Instagram, but love football. This isn't high school. And it's not like, Jimmy just wants the varsity jacket and he wants to talk to all the girls and he wants to, this is the NFL. Shouldn't you figure that out before you draft somebody that they actually love football or not? But that's neither here nor there. ESPN has their latest power rankings out. And yes, they are quite a doozy. They have their latest power rankings. And I don't feel like anybody's talking about the Titans. Now, to the credit of Steve Lehman asking the question, which is, do you feel the pressure? Every coach, every general manager is going to answer back the same way every time, which is we always feel the pressure. Every year we feel the pressure. In this business, you always feel pressure. In this business, you're always going to get fired. In this business, I don't know what everybody else thinks of the Titans. I know what we think of the Titans. I know what I think of the Titans, what my expectation for the Titans is. But as far as what the rest of the country thinks of the Titans, I don't know. The Titans aren't the Dallas Cowboys. So if they're not at the top of the league or they don't have an MVP quarterback, they just don't get discussed. So ESPN's new power rankings are out. Post-free agency power rankings. Number 1, Kansas City. They stayed number 1. They were already number 1. Number 2, Tampa Bay, after they brought their whole team back. 3, Green Bay. 4, Buffalo. 5, Baltimore. 6, the Rams. I don't know why the Rams get all the love, but people love the Rams.
Well, they love the Stafford move.
Yeah, but Stafford, do people forget that Stafford has kind of sucked?
And I think some people forget he's not as young as he used to be either, and he's been banged up. I mean, his back was bothering him bad last year.
I mean, Stafford, it makes him a little bit better, but I don't think it makes him that much better. Anywho, Cleveland 7, Tennessee clocking in at number 8. By the way, other AFC teams to know, Indianapolis is 10. The Steelers, of all people, are 11. The Dolphins are 14, and the Chargers are 17. And I would just argue I wouldn't give up on the Chargers. I think the Chargers made some nice moves that I like. But ESPN writes about the Titans, who they originally had 10th. After free agency, they move them up to 8th. The Titans needed to add a jolt to their pass rush, which is exactly what they did, writes ESPN, when they added D'Amico Autry and Bud Dupree. The two players had 15.5 sacks between them in 2020. Both players excelled with their previous teams in an abundance of ways, including executing stunts along the defensive front. Autry and Dupree should be able to find a high degree of success on twists and games up front. Both players are also hard-nosed, physically tough football players who will set the tone from the start in Tennessee. So to answer what John Robinson said, it sounds like, according to this, they love ball. But I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like if I see the Titans are ranked 8th in the NFL, I think that's a little too rich for me. And I don't know. Does that mean that there should be pressure on Vrabel and there should be pressure on Robinson? And we should look at these guys and say, hey, ESPN ranks you as 8th. So if they're ranking you as 8th, you should live up to that billing. The only teams right now that they say are better in the AFC, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cleveland. By the way, I can dissect each one of those teams and tell you something I don't like about them. Kansas City, they lost their tackles. They paid money for a guard, and they don't run the football. No thank you. Now, I still think Kansas City's the best team in the AFC, but I'm just pointing out something I don't like about each team. Buffalo, when push came to shove against Kansas City, they couldn't win that shootout. Their defense, which was just mean and nasty the year before, not so much, especially in the AFC title game. Cleveland, I'd like to see Cleveland take a year of success and do something with it. Because last time they got to the playoffs, they didn't go for another 22 years. That owner is still crazy. Baltimore, everybody's going to put the games that matter the most more and more and more and more on Lamar to throw. And is Lamar going to take those steps as a thrower? So there's something about each team that I don't love. But then I think about the Titans at 8, and I'm like, you know what? It's pretty much the same crew. The star players are the same guys. Tannehill, Henry, Lewan, A.J. Brown, Byard, Jeffrey Simmons. They got better players at the positions of need. Danico Autry, player of need, much better than Daquan Jones. Bud Dupree, position of need, much better than Jadeveon Clowney. They still got to find a slot receiver, and they got to figure out who's starting at tight end. But the core returns, most of the coaching systems return. Shouldn't we look at this 8th ranking and say, you know what, it's not crazy? It's not crazy. John Robinson, Mike Vrabel, 8th best team in the league. Not crazy. And that's where I can't tell. Because I don't feel great about the Titans right now. Maybe it's the way they finished last season. I didn't like the way the end of the season went. Blown out against Cleveland. I know they came back, but that game was well over after the first quarter. Blown out on the road Sunday Night Football against Green Bay. I mean, I'm a little skeptical. I think there's going to be more on Vrabel's plate this year, and I think there's going to be more pressure on Vrabel because I think you're starting to hear some chatter about things people don't like about Mike Vrabel. And if the team doesn't win and the arrogance continues or even gets higher, I think you're going to hear more people not like certain things about Mike Vrabel. I mean, I'm telling you, man, the pressure is on. And I know everybody says, in pro sports, the pressure's always on all the time. Then it would go when it goes to want to fire somebody, they tell you all the reasons why you can't blame that person. Well, you can't blame Sean McVay because why? He convinced you to sign Jared Goff to a huge contract. 2 years later, you're trading away first-round picks because you want to get rid of Jared Goff. So you paid him all the money. Now you want to get rid of him. Now you're paying him to leave. You're paying the other team to take him. And I can't be mad at Sean McVay? Well, you got to understand, and it's the same way here with Vrabel. But I see that, and I think, man, maybe in my head, I'm underestimating how good the Titans should be. 8th in the league, 5th in the AFC. I mean, hey, there is pressure with that now. There is real pressure, and you can't bail on Tannehill to get you out of it. You can't bail on a player to say, well, it was his fault, not my fault. So this might be the most uncomfortable set of expectations that Robinson and Vrabel have dealt with since they've gotten here. And to me, that means, hey, you better hit in free agency, and now that's pretty much over, and you better hit in the draft. And if you don't hit in the draft this year, you ain't the 8th best team in the league. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to some of your texts. We will get to those coming up next. Hey, it's time to save cash fast with Nashville's best deals. Go to thegamenashville.com right now to get half off $20 gift cards from Grain and Berry in Hillsborough Village. Grain and Berry is Nashville's superfood cafe where healthy meets delicious. Stillman Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. We're streaming on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope. I don't know exactly all the places we're streaming. I know we're streaming on YouTube. And we're delivered by TriStar Moving. And, of course, we are always on the Game Nashville app. Stillman Company. Hey, by the way, 1025 The Game and T-Mobile have teamed up to help you continue the tradition with a hockey home-gating party. It's time to text into the game text line, 615-737-1025. For your chance to win the T-Mobile Hockey Home Game, watch a weekend Preds game with a Dos Equis prize pack, which includes a case of beer, dessert from Nothing But Cakes, a T-Mobile prize pack, and food provided by 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. Text the word GOLD to 615-737-1025 now for your chance to enter. The winner will be contacted Thursday, must be 21 or older to enter. I promised phone, 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Ellie is up next on the Titans. Thank you for calling. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. By the way, go ahead, Ellie.
Yeah, a couple things. First thing is, I think John did a good job in free agency this year. I think the only mistake he made was instead of cutting Adoree Jackson, I think they could have traded him for a third-round pick. I didn't see the reason to cut him because I think other teams would have been interested and we could have gotten something in return. And the second thing is, I do know who the Titans are taking in the draft. They're going to take the injured player who just came off surgery because that's what they do. They like taking injured players, for example, Bud Dupree, Corey Davis when he was hurt, Jeffrey Simmons. So I assume they're going to take Caleb Farley. And thank you.
So I appreciate your call, Ellie. It was so funny working with a GM who literally hated injured players. Like, there was not a racist, sexist, xenophobic bone in Floyd Reese's body. But he was an injurist. Ian, I think you can back me up on that. He hated injured players.
Hated it. And the fact that Corey Davis and them didn't run a 40 and all that kind of stuff just drove him up a wall.
Hated it. An injurist. That's what he was. John Robinson, to the caller's point, John Robinson doesn't care.
Does not care.
Jeffrey Simmons was injured. Corey Davis was injured. Bud Dupree was injured. Jadeveon Clowney was injured. Harold Landry was injured. I mean, he does not. He looks at it like I'm a guy who likes to go to TJ Maxx, right? Like I could have $1 billion and I would still shop at TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Ross, and I would shop at all those places because I just don't like paying $300 for a belt. I just don't like it. And I know that if you pay $300 for a belt, it will look better, it will fit better, it will last longer, it's made of better materials, and I hate it. I hate, like, it's the principle. You could buy 30 $10 belt. I got a belt that I bought from Nordstrom one time in 2012 or 2013, and I still have that belt, and it looks good today. I probably, if I had bought that same belt from TJ Maxx, I probably would have bought 15 belts by now. So I would have paid more money for those belts. And yet I will shop there for forever. And that's what John Robinson does in free agency. He loves shopping at TJ Maxx. Hey, I can get a Bud Dupree, and I'm going to pay a lot of money for it, but, you know, it's got this this manufacturer defect with the torn ACL, so I can get it for less. Jeffrey Simmons, hey, if you got Jeffrey Simmons at the regular store, it would be the 3rd overall pick, but because I got him with the bad knee, he falls to 19. And, hey, it worked on Simmons. Didn't work on anybody else, but it worked with Simmons. So that has always been weird for me. I'm not a draft breaking down guy. TD comes on the show for the TD Power Hour every week. I don't know if there's anybody in the business who watches more tape on draft prospects that isn't affiliated with a team and paid millions of dollars to do so than Teron Davenport. And the sense is Caleb Farley, the corner, is going way off the board before the Titans get to pick at 22. So if he is there at 22 and it's because of an injury, I think the Titans would be interested because they would look at it like, hey, this guy would have been the 8th overall pick in the draft. So what do you think? And I think everybody would say, okay, yeah, that's a good value buy. And since they've let him do it before, he'll probably do it again. There was something over the weekend that I want to get to. And I thought it was important that the Preds brought this up. It's been a rough decade for Nashville. In spite of the record growth and in spite of all the feel-good stories, especially surrounded by sports and all the things that have been going on, and home values are skyrocketing. And in the last year alone, we had the tornado that ripped through North Nashville, the pandemic, which cost all these people their jobs, and now this past weekend, another flood. Now, it wasn't as bad, I don't believe. It wasn't as bad as the flood of 2010, but it was a bad flood. And, I mean, my phone was going bananas. I was here at the house on Saturday night, so to me, and I live up on a hill, so I feel pretty good about, you know, when it floods, I think I'll be okay. But just thinking about all the other people and remembering what 2010 was like, and John Hines took to the press after the game yesterday to talk about it. Roman Josi took to the press after the game yesterday to talk about it. I think that the sports teams have always been behind the city. And again, another issue with the city. Here's what John Hines had to say after the game about Nashville and the floods.
Just wanted to make sure that we've had some weather problems in Nashville, and we just, as an organization, you know, just wish the families and people that are, you know, have been injured or have died, or people that have lost their homes in the floods. It's been pretty difficult and adverse situations for Nashville, you know, probably over the last year since I've actually been here from the tornado. So we just wish everyone the best, and you're in our thoughts and prayers as an organization to the people in Nashville that have been affected by the bad weather.
And I thought that was really classy, and Roman Josi followed up with something similar.
As a team, we're obviously here in Chicago last 2 days, but we obviously heard about the floods in Nashville, and just want to send out our thoughts and the prayers as a team for people who got affected by the floods, people who lost their life. I know there's two people from Home Street Home that lost their lives. It's a charity that's really close to my heart. So if there's any way you can give and help, we're certainly going to come back to Nashville and try to help in any way we can as a team. So just as a team, obviously horrible news, but thinking of Nashville.
And you hate hearing that. I mean, it was very classy and very well said by them. And you hate hearing it because you hate that once again there's another situation in our town that is affecting the lives of many of our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, everybody that's kind of in our bubble here in Nashville. And it's been a rough year. The tornadoes, the pandemic that's canceled 2 CMA festivals, that's the entertainment districts and Broadway and everything else, and all of the money that has been lost off of that. I mean, it's just, it's wild to think about. It's very sad and very heartbreaking. The one thing I will say is this, though, and that is that after the tornadoes, we came back. After the first flood, we came back. After the pandemic, we were coming back. And after this flood, we will come back. So there's a lot of work that's going to be needed to be done, both by our government officials, and that's way over my pay grade, and by a lot of us. And what we can do, from a charity standpoint. I remember, I saw Big Joe talking about the Little League fields out in Mount Juliet and Smyrna and how they're just washed away. And I was thinking in my heart about these kids who didn't get to play last year because of COVID and who now might not get to play this year because their field's a mess. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what can I do to help out? Well, we're going to have to do it again for our town, just like we did with the tornado, just like we did with the last flood. And we're probably going to have to do it in the future again. But Floyd always said this, and I always believed it, which was there was a can-do attitude that when it came to this city and protecting our own and talking about our own and thinking about our own and taking care of our own. And it looks like we as a city have been challenged with it once again. The one thing I'll say about Nashville, you can't find somebody in Nashville who isn't willing to help out. It's like everybody here is saying, hey, what do I need to do to help out? And I feel the same way about us. And I feel the same way about anything that comes up as far as this past flood is concerned. But very scary evening. You hear the stories about people that were driving when the flood advisory hit. Very scary. And our first responders, once again, back at it as they always have done. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Speaking of the Predators, coming up next, there is optimism. The last 2 months, it's been a dark place. Predators Twitter, Predators phone calls on this show. I mean, everything. It has been a dark place. But coming up next, is the optimism a little overblown, even though they're playing well? That question's for you, not for me. We'll get to that coming up next, and why one national analyst says, hey, Preds fans, pump the brakes. Stillman Company, right here. We are streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, everything else, and, of course, the Game Nashville app, and you can listen to us right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, streaming all 4 hours on Twitch and YouTube and Periscope, apparently, and I don't know all the places we're streaming. I should have a full detailed list. I mean, Robbie Stanley, I got to give him credit because they've been streaming the morning show for the last couple of weeks. Robbie Stanley literally reads it off saying, hey, find us here, 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 and here and here. And that's what we're doing now. So 4 hours streaming. We don't have to pay somebody else to do it for us, or broker some kind of deal, or I don't know, something. We're rocking and rolling. 4 hours streaming. The morning show streaming. Is the midday show streaming? I think they probably are too.
I think so.
But it's good because the Predators are starting to play well. Let me say this as a Nashville area radio host. I feel like I'm the guy who always has to bring the bad news. Like, I'm the guy who has to say, hey, slow down, Titan fans. I know you don't like Mike Mularkey because he was a bad coach in Buffalo, but he's getting you to the playoffs. Like, maybe we should give this guy, at least give him a chance. I feel like I'm the guy who has to bring bad news. When you play the Chicago Blackhawks in the playoffs, they are going to be much highly touted and favored heavily in that matchup, and you're probably not going to win. And people get mad. And so the Predators, and that was in 2017, and obviously I was wrong and you all were right. So the Predators today are sitting in pretty good shape as far as their season is concerned. As a local radio host, let me just say, I love it. Like, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh my God, in January and February, I thought that they were at the point where there was no way, 0% chance that they'd have an interesting March, April, and then the start of May right up to the playoffs. I figured this team right now would be selling assets, and once we got to the trade deadline, it was going to be like pulling teeth to talk about the Predators. It's like, hey, they're 43 points out of a playoff spot, and they've got Columbus tonight, who also stinks. What do we think? But no, they've made it interesting. They are winning a lot. They beat good teams like Tampa Bay, Florida. They've beat bad teams like Detroit, swept them both last week. They've beaten so-so teams like the Blackhawks, swept them this past weekend. They are in a playoff spot. And so now, when 3 weeks ago, a month ago, it was sell, everybody on board. Ekholm's got to go, unfortunately. Maybe Forsberg has to go. Granlund's got to go. Hollow's got to go. Cousins got to go. These guys, they all got to go. Blow it up. Fire the coach. Well, now we're not there right now. And I think we're starting to see the optimism seep back in. On Wednesday of last week, 62% of you said that they wanted to sell. I've taken all the calls today. I've read all the text, and it definitely feels like a lot less than 62% still wants to sell all the assets. So now they find themselves competing for a playoff spot. And I find it very hard to believe that they won't be competing for a playoff spot the rest of the season, which should make for fun and entertaining games. Dallas tomorrow night, they're competing with Dallas for a playoff spot. Chicago this weekend, they're competing with Chicago for a playoff spot. When they play Detroit, when they play Columbus, you got to win those games. When you play Tampa Bay, when you play Florida or Carolina, you're going to want to hold your own. Plus, if you're in a playoff spot, aren't you going to want to measure yourselves against that team? Right now, that's where the Preds are. But is it a little ridiculous? If we're being honest, are the Predators really that much better than they were 3 weeks ago when we couldn't even turn on the TV to watch this team play? Like, is the talent on the roster better? Is the coach better? Was there a flip that got switched? What? And so when the Predators players talk about making the playoffs or talk about being in a playoff spot, like Roman Josi did after the game yesterday, I get a little skeptical. Hal Gill came on the show last week and dared me, say, hey, you go in that locker room and you tell those players and you tell those guys that you still want to sell. And now they've won even more games. They've won 4 in a row since Hal and I got into that argument. It's not going to be easy to go in that locker room and tell those guys they need to sell. But Greg Wyshynski was on our show earlier today, ESPN, And I asked him, hey, has this changed even the national outlook on the Predators? Here's what he said.
It's insane. Of course they should sell. What are we doing? Like you said, they're competing as hard as they can, and you have to give them credit for the results. But the ultimate prize is to get absolutely murdered by Tampa Bay, who, remember, is not only the best team in this division right now, but will only get better because Nikita Kucherov is coming back for the playoffs. So, right now you have to give them credit for turning their season around. At least they're making it respectful. At least it looks like they're going to be a team that plays beyond the end of the regular season based on these playoff percentages. I mean, they've got a much better chance, courtesy of Money Puck, than do the Chicago Blackhawks, than do the Dallas Stars, of making these playoffs. But making the playoffs means you're just going to get manhandled by Tampa in 5 or 6 games. And then if you don't act at the trade deadline, then you aren't making the necessary moves to start transitioning this team into the next phase of whatever it's going to be, because making the playoffs ahead of a broken Dallas team and a bad Chicago team and a Columbus team that's going to fire its coach does not mean everything's fixed.
I kind of agree. Like, he's telling you, hey, even if you make the playoffs, you get hammered by Tampa. Is that really worth the second-round pick that you're not going to get if you don't trade Mikhail Granlund? Is that really worth? I saw the projected trades on The Athletic this weekend. Matthias Ekholm was projected to Winnipeg. Now, I'm a little cautious about trading Ekholm to Winnipeg, only because next year, if they go back to the regular divisions, I don't like the idea of having to face Matthias Ekholm. Normally, you would not trade somebody like that in division, but again, it happens. I mean, St. Louis did that with Paul Stastny when they sent him to Winnipeg, so it happens. But it was a number 1 pick, their highest defensive prospect, who's 19 years old, and I think Pierre LeBrun wrote in the piece, like, if I was Winnipeg, I would try not to trade this guy, and that's what you'd be giving up on if you don't sell. That's what you wouldn't have. Top young defensive prospect, number 1 picks for you to go out and get more players, for you to set up the next 10, 15 years of the Predators, and yet some people don't want to do it. That team doesn't want to do it. But of course they don't want to do it. Of course the players don't want to do it. Because, will Philip Forsberg, if you use a second-round pick this year and draft the next Roman Josi, will he really be Roman Josi by the time Philip Forsberg is still playing? Probably not. He certainly won't be Roman Josi when Arvidsson or Yarncroke or Grimaldi or any of those guys are playing. So I'm not really sure I care what the team thinks. The fans, it matters what you think. But if you're somebody who thinks that all of a sudden this team's red hot and they can do anything, I would just caution you to slow down just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. And I'm going to hear, and I know it, well, Jared, in 2017, they were the 16th seed. They got into the playoffs. Nobody gave them a chance, especially you. Nobody gave them a chance against the Blackhawks, and they swept them. In 2019, the Blues were the worst team in the league on January 1st and won the Stanley Cup. In it's just going to go on and on. In 2019, Columbus made the playoffs. Jarmo Kekalainen went for it at the trade deadline. They acquired Matt Duchene. They held on to Artemi Panarin, and they knocked off the mighty and unbeatable Tampa Bay Lightning, just like you would have to do if you played them this year. And I asked Greg Wyshynski about that. I said, okay, what would you say to those people who say that? Because there's going to be a lot of them if the Predators keep winning. Here's what he said.
Sure. No, it's fine. I mean, everybody remembers Columbus won the Cup that year, right? After they swept Tampa. Oh, wait. No, they didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be able to pull some surprises. You're going to be able to make some noise. The bottom line is that if you think that this Nashville team is currently constituted can beat the Hurricanes, the Lightning, the winner of Colorado and Vegas, and or the Toronto Maple Leafs, all right, more power to you. I don't think they can. I think this team needs to get better in a lot of different areas, get younger, and they need to start flipping some of these assets for things that can help them in the future. Because the run for this team was great. It's the best time I think for this organization in its history. And if you want the good times to keep rolling, you've got to be able to change on the fly. And I'm not saying tear it all down. I'm not one of these people. It's like trade Forsberg. I don't think that's the solution. I think there are some players in this roster and some talents on this team. One, that you can't move, and then two that are going to be part of whatever the next phase is going to be. And I think Forsberg's one of them. I just think that those wheels have to start turning, and you can't allow delusion to set in just because you happen to be better than three really bad teams this year and sneak into the playoffs.
So the number 2 hockey guy at ESPN behind Barry Melrose is telling you, like, hey, good for you, but. And I think we have to listen to the but. Ian, I know I've told this story many times. My best friend growing up, we have been best friends since the first day of preschool. He is a doctor. And obviously now focused a lot in the ER on COVID and the COVID ICU and everything, but he's an internal medicine doc. And so he's, he sees patients, and a lot of it is about, people that come into the hospital that have diabetes. And I can't tell you how many people he sat down with and said, hey, you have diabetes. And they look at him and they're like, nah, here's what I think, doc. And he's like, I have to be the one to look at them and say, he has diabetes. You have diabetes. You need to lose weight. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to be told, hey, you know what? You got to lose weight. Sometimes you just say it because you know that someone needs to lose weight. It's like, hey, you need to lose weight. But in this case, it's if you don't lose weight, there's hypertension, kidney issues. We know that obesity is one of the leading factors in death from COVID. There's a lot, lungs, heart conditions. There's a lot of issues, leg amputations. So the doctor has to look at you and say, hey, you're on the path towards diabetes. Here's what you have to do. Nobody wants to hear that. No patient wants to hear that. I'm sure the Predators don't want to hear, after playing the best hockey that they've played in 2 years, they don't want to hear, hey, you still need to sell these guys off. I know they're playing hard. I know they're doing what the coach is saying. I know they're busting their butts. I know they want to make the playoffs. I know they believe in themselves. But one of the main guys from ESPN is telling you, hey, don't get too caught up in it. 615-737-1025 will get to your calls and your texts. Does what Greg Wyshynski says, ESPN says, hey, it's insane to think that what we've seen in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it's been, it's insane to think that that should change how we feel about the team. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? We'll get to your calls. We'll get to your texts. Plus, the one analogy that I feel like is probably apropos when it comes to the Predators and why we need to remember this state we're in right now with this team. We'll get to that coming up. Stillman Company is live from the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app. We're streaming on YouTube. We're streaming on Twitch. Video streaming, all the work. So if you want to see me in the Green Hill studio, which is right here, I hope I have on a good-looking shirt. I don't know. Ian, do you think I have a good-looking shirt on today?
Yes, you have a nice collared shirt on.
Thank you. Well, it's a business. It's work. 615-737-1025. Hey, Preds fans, join ESPN 1025 The Game Wednesday from 6 to 7 for Smashville Live, featuring Preds players, former players, and other special guests. Watch the show online via 1025 The Game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and theGameNashville.com. During the show, look for the keyword to text in for your chance to win a pair of tickets to see the Preds and the Dallas Stars at Bridgestone Arena on Thursday night. Smashville Live is brought to you by New Amsterdam Vodka, Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, and Red Spirits and Wine in Bellevue.
You always hear about the veterans elevating the level of play of the youth movement, the rookies, but what specifically are the young guys doing to help elevate the play of the veterans and the team as a whole?
They've been great. I mean, they brought in a lot of energy. I think there's so many new faces that have been playing unbelievable with a ton of energy. They're playing with confidence. They're making great plays out there, and I think as a veteran, it's fun to see, and it's fun to play with guys like that, and it's exciting, and you can see it gives the team a spark.
Roman Yossi on the young guys. I won't disagree with that. I fired off a hot take this morning. Well, I shouldn't say a hot take. You will think it's a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take. I think it's the truth. I fired one off to Robbie Stanley this morning where we were talking about Ryan Ellis, because a lot of people are saying, hey, trade Ellis, not Ekholm, which I'm not sure you're in the position to trade Ellis right now. But I fired something off where I you know me, I've always been down on Ryan Ellis, and I'm probably the most down right now. And I fired one off to Robbie, and I said, hey, right now, to me, Alexander Carrier gives the Predators way more than Ryan Ellis does. And I thought Robbie was going to fire something back like, hey, that's ridiculous. And he didn't. And that tells me where some of these veterans are compared to the young guys right now.
Carrier looks legit, to be honest with you.
No, Carrier looks legit. And he's big, and he can play. And that's part of it, is some of these guys can play. Tolvanen can play. Carrier can play. Olivier, as a fourth-line guy, can play.
Him and Trennan have been doing well on that fourth line.
Trennan can play. Some guys can't play. Like, Ben Harper is right there on the cusp as to whether or not he can play.
I thought these were maybe his best two games versus Chicago that I've seen him play so far this year.
So I thought his best game was against Columbus on a Saturday night a couple of weeks ago. I thought he was outstanding. But I thought Harper was okay, but he's right on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of these guys can't. Like Michael McCarron, he can't play.
Yeah, he should not be in the lineup.
No. Texter to the text line, our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com says, how about we sell and make the playoffs? Could happen, and would always rather make the playoffs than not make the playoffs. I mean, I'm for that. Fine. You want to sell at the deadline, trade Granlund, trade Holla, bring in young guys to take their spots, and still make the playoffs and thus not get put into the lottery, that's fine. Because at that point, a first-round pick's a first-round pick, and being in the lottery means you could be picking number one overall. But I've been told that this draft class isn't really all that great anyways, and this Preds team is no longer bad enough, in my estimation, to allow you to get one of the top picks. So I'm not sitting here to say, like, I don't think it'll matter whatsoever, or I don't think it matters at all, or but I guess if I'm being realistic, as far as the Predators are concerned, I would say, you want to make the playoffs, knock yourself out. If you think that this team needs to hold on to Mikael Granlund because of it, I can't do that. I can't. Texter says, talk about how well Tolvanen's playing. He's playing well. Like, do I need to say anything more than that? Like, he's playing well. Ellie Tolvanen has proven to me. I was talking to this with Ryan Porth over the weekend. Ryan gets on me because when the season started and the Predators didn't put Ellie Tolvanen on the active roster, and they didn't play him, and they didn't give us any indication that they were planning on playing him, I said, well, obviously he can't play. As if that's a bad take. And I told Ryan, I said, that is a take out of context. Because what you're telling me is that it's a bad take because I said the kid can't play and obviously can play. No. My whole thing was they didn't believe that he could play.
Or that he wasn't ready.
And you know what? If you want to argue with me that in 2018, when David Poyle said, the day he signs, he'll be a top six forward. If you want to argue with me that he wasn't ready, then okay. If you want to argue with me at the beginning of last year that he wasn't ready, okay. I have no proof. Like, I don't watch Milwaukee Admiral hockey games, nor do I really know how to break that down, nor do I care to. Fine. But you can't convince me he shouldn't have been on the team in the bubble. And you can't convince me he shouldn't have started the year in the lineup. He's a top six forward. He's good. What am I supposed to do? Just pull out of my rear end? Oh, yeah, this guy can play, that guy can't play. If they're not going to let a guy play who they drafted in the first round, there's a reason for it. Now, if we want to investigate why they wouldn't let Tolvanen play, and if that's a problem, if their evaluation of forwards, which, no offense, has kind of been a problem over the years, if that's an issue, I'm totally cool talking about that. But the idea that it's like, you said he couldn't play, that was a bad take, I said that's what they were telling us. I'll tell you right now, do you think Logan Woodside, the backup quarterback of the Titans, is any good right now? Ian, do you think Logan Woodside's good?
Can't go there.
Okay. How much Logan Woodside have you watched?
Well, considering he never plays, not very much.
Okay, so we assume he sucks because he's the backup quarterback and they don't let him play. That's normally how you feel about a backup quarterback. When you don't let Tolvanen play, that's how I felt. Tolvanen can play. And I look at a guy like Arvidsson, and, he was a first-line guy here for a while. They're not the same level of talent. That doesn't mean that Tolvanen's ever going to have the same results Arvidsson had. They play a different style of game. But, like, Forsberg is a first-line caliber player. Tolvanen is a first-line caliber player. Johansson, and I know he doesn't produce like a first-line player, he has the talent of a first-line player. That's why I don't like the idea of trading Ekholm and, putting all your resources into Ryan Ellis, because I don't think Ryan Ellis has that talent. PK Subban had that talent. Now, PK maybe doesn't care anymore or doesn't have the work ethic that he once had, but PK had that talent. Roman Josi has that talent. Matthias Ekholm has that talent. Dante Fabro, jury's still out on. Heidi from Dixon says the Predators winning a few against bad teams should not get David Poile off the hook. He has had enough chances. So I agree. And I'm not here today to jump on, they're winning games and that's good. I'm not here to jump on the everybody should want to fire David Poile bandwagon. I'm not doing that. I'm not jumping up and down, calling for it. I'm not doing any of that. But I made my decision. I said, hey, if I owned the team a couple of weeks ago, I'd be looking outside the organization at what's next. I'm still there. Now, I think an interesting question, I asked Greg Wyshynski this earlier today from ESPN. I asked him, okay, what would the Predators have to do in order for you to say, hey, this is not fool's gold. This is something real. This is 2019 St. Louis Blue-ish. And he said they got to get 3 good lines. Right now they have 1. It's hard for me to believe that they're going to have 3 good lines. I agree with the premise of the texter, which is that winning a few games at this point of the season should not get David Poile off the hook if David was on the hot seat. But in my heart, I'm not sure David was on the hot seat. I don't think they wanted David on the hot seat, and any opportunity to get David off the hot seat is probably one they're willing to take. Like, just being completely honest. I think this little run that has taken them from absolute trash into a playoff discussion and exciting hockey in March, April, and the beginning of May, which I think we're going to get, that probably is enough, unfortunately, to save David's job. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. For about the 16th time, without one shovel going into the ground, Vanderbilt has made another announcement. But do we think there may be some merit on this one? We'll get to that next. TriStar Moving. Stillman Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. Those are my official movers. I hate moving. Everybody hates moving. I hate everything there is to do with moving. I hate packing. I hate telling people where to put stuff. I hate disassembling stuff. I hate when other people, I hate it all. But not when you have friends like TriStar Moving, because they do a great job. There is a reason why their motto is TriStar Moving with 5-star service. And I will promise you, I got 5-star service from my friends at TriStar Moving. Everything is taken care of, and they even put my TVs, and I got a bunch of them, into protective boxes. They also offer state-of-the-art brand new storage service facilities in case you need a safe place for all of your stuff. They do it all. The owners, Garrett and Robert, are true Nashvillians, and they truly care about helping this community any way they can. So if you're looking to move, give my friends at TriStar Moving a call, 615-640-1219, or visit their website at nashvillemoving.org/radio. They'll give you 5% off your entire move. That's TriStarMoving.org. nationalmoving.org/radio. Tell them Jared Stillman sent you. My official movers, TriStar Moving.
So when Chancellor Dearmeyer offered me this job, we both knew that in some ways it would be a heavy lift, but he also assured me that he would be my partner. Today's announcement is just another illustration of that partnership and commitment. And I can't think of a better example of a Vandy United than this initiative. We have worked closely with student athletes, with coaches, faculty, staff, alumni, donors, and fans to ensure that we build the programs in each and every one of our sports that Vanderbilt deserves. It's one thing to have a bold vision, but that vision must lead to real action. And it must start with addressing the student athlete's needs.
There you go, Candace Story Lee. Vanderbilt's got a vision. Vanderbilt's gonna grow. Vanderbilt. Here you go, $300 million. The Vandy United Fund, $10 million from John Ingram, Apparently, they've already secured another $100 million, and they have a $300 million plan. Now, let me state for the record, Vanderbilt has not put one shovel into the ground, I do believe. According to this, Vanderbilt worked with Perkins and Will on the strategic planning phase of the facilities and selected Populous as the master architect. Populous is an award-winning global architecture and design firm specializing in creating environments and venues that draw communities and people together. La, la, la. Design is underway. Okay, so not one shovel has gone into the ground. If you've been following Vanderbilt in this town for the last 15 years, you would know that these kind of press conferences are not unique. That it feels like Vanderbilt fans complain about nothing being done and how the stadium is a dump and how the facilities stink. And then Vanderbilt promises that there will be changes. They then act like they're super secretive and they can't tell you about the changes. And then they announce the changes, and then the changes never happen. Now, John Ingram's donating $10 million, so I think something's going to happen. But remember when they hired Clark Lee and Candace Storey was like, I wouldn't be here if I couldn't sell Vanderbilt, and I can sell Vanderbilt because I remember that. Still don't see a shovel in the ground. Remember all the times Derek Mason said, oh, no, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it never came, and Derek's gone. Now, Tim Corbin, when he says he's going to do something, he does it himself, and they get it built. Basketball, what do they do? What are they doing for basketball? So here's what Vanderbilt's plan is. The Football Operations Center. This facility will house team-specific needs, such as meeting rooms, offices, training room, and expanded locker rooms and more. An expanded McGugin Center that will benefit all teams, which will include a new sports performance center. I think that means a new weight room. Indoor football practice facility will include a full-length practice field adjacent to the outdoor practice fields. I have no idea what was inside there before. I mean, would they have like a basketball court inside the football facility? I mean, I drive by it all the time, and I it illuminates at night. It looks like an indoor facility, but maybe, it's only 50 yards or something? I don't know. Anywho. A basketball operations center. The facility will include team-specific needs for men's and women's basketball, including a dedicated practice courts, a weight room, locker room, offices, and more. By the way, I went to college in 2008. Louisville had just opened up their brand new practice facility. That was a decade and a half ago. And that's what they're talking about doing at Vanderbilt. Upgraded stadium fan experience. Improvements will include premium seating options, hospitality space, upgraded food and beverage options, and other amenities. Great. Here are my two things. Number one, if you've been following Vanderbilt closely, you don't believe it until you actually see it. Nobody believes anything that Vanderbilt says or does until they actually do it. I don't know if Clark Lee, the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, who got the head coaching job, is from Nashville and is an alum of Vandy. I don't know if he really believed that they were going to be doing this, that, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to have this and this is going to be the difference and let's do it. I don't know if he actually believed that or if he was like, yeah, I'm making $1.1 million running the defense at Notre Dame. I'll make $4.5 million to be the head coach at Vanderbilt. And I'll get to be head coach, and I'll get to be in my town, and I'll be at a school where the expectations aren't high, and it'll be tougher for them to fire me because I'm an alum. That's just me. I had a friend I talked to today who just doesn't buy it, who played at Vanderbilt, loves Vanderbilt. He doesn't buy it. Says, okay, fine. And then went on a rant about how even what they're saying isn't good enough. I was thinking about this today. Vanderbilt is going to make a $300 million commitment to athletics, which, again, is more money than we've seen given to Vanderbilt recently. I can't remember when the last time a shovel went into the ground that wasn't at the baseball facility and wasn't raised by Tim Corbin himself. Which means this. Is that good enough? Like, is $300 million legitimately good enough to build Vanderbilt what they need to compete in the SEC? As I said, I went to college at Louisville, where no expense is overlooked in terms of being better at sports. And you can probably make whatever joke you want about the fact that our basketball team hired prostitutes, or that we hired Bobby Petrino as our coach for a second time and gave him $14 million to go away. You can make fun of us all you want, but the desire to win is obvious, and it's been that way for a while. All of the things that Vanderbilt currently has, or is planning to add, all the other schools already have. The only program, again, is the baseball program, where they have things for their athletes that other schools don't have. The former player's locker room, where the player can work out at Vanderbilt, throw on the field, get in a bullpen, take BP, shag ground balls, whatever, and then go to a full-length, state-of-the-art workout or a locker room. Other schools don't have that. But, again, Tim Corbin does that on his own. If Vanderbilt was really going to compete with the SEC, my guess is $300 million is not going to cut it. They probably need to be somewhere in the ballpark of $1 billion, and that might be conservative. Think about this. When a new NFL team builds a stadium from scratch, it immediately costs $2 billion at the jump. Like, I want to say the Rams stadium costs like $3.5 billion. That's one stadium. Now, I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going to build the same stadium that the Rams built. But for all of the other improvements, redoing the basketball gym, which needs to be done, redoing the weight rooms, redoing the locker rooms, redoing the offices. This is a university that reportedly fired their last athletic director after he spent $500,000 on his new office. Spending money is not something they want to do at Vanderbilt. So I hear this, and I see, hey, we've got $300 million. We are investing, finally, after years and years of neglect and failure to admit that we were completely neglecting everybody. Now we're going to build. And still, it's a third of what they should be spending, and there's no guarantee they're actually going to do it. And in your heart, do you feel like it really matters? So good for Vanderbilt. I'm not here to dump on them, and I'm not here to rip on them, and I'm not whatever. But, like, I've heard other ADs say this. I've heard other press conferences that address things like this. I've heard new coaches, when they take jobs, talk about things like this. I just don't buy it. They have a women's basketball program that was a proud top-of-the-country program. Now they're completely irrelevant within their own city block. And they just keep the coach. I told him that coach wasn't going to work out on the first day. I gave her a year. I like her as a person. I think she's a good person. But I knew that coach wasn't going to work out. And they just keep on doing what they're doing. So it's a nice announcement. Maybe you can be excited about it, but I'm not. I need to see a shovel in the ground. I need to see that football stadium change. I need to feel it change in the culture. Maybe Chancellor Diermeyer is the guy to do it. But the key word is maybe, and with Vanderbilt, you got to show me. I'm not taking your word for it. 615-737-1025. Ian, I wanted to be 8-0 on Sweet 16 games on Friday. I was 5-3.
Still pretty good.
But the caveat to that was I started off 5-0.
I mean, you texted me at 3-0, and you were feeling pretty good about it on Saturday evening. And I guess the wheels kind of fell off on Sunday. But still, 5-3 is legit.
Alabama screwed me by not making a free throw. USC and Oregon. I just said Oregon was more of a basketball school. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't even watch that game. So I'm trying to think, what's
Florida
the other one?
State. Florida State was a bad one.
God,
Michigan's
that one.
legit.
Hey, you know what? If I'm going to be mad at myself, I'm going to be mad about that.
Yep.
That's the one I should be mad about. I am planning on a perfect 4-0 in the Elite Eight. So coming up next, I will pick all 4 games. And I will tell you, because I got a gut feeling, I got a gut feeling I feel pretty good about. We'll do that coming up next right here on Stillman Company. There is always one team that ruins your bracket. That's why this year you got to bet the tournament on my official sportsbook app, the FanDuel Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook. Because on FanDuel, your first bet is risk-free. It doesn't matter if you're betting on Gonzaga or Michigan or if you're betting on, I don't know, Oregon State or UCLA. New users get up to $1,000 in site credit back if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel has odds on all the actions with games day and night and an easy-to-use app, multiple deposits, and fast withdrawals with always-on promotions, so your next chance to win with FanDuel is only minutes away. And if that's not enough, FanDuel wants to make you a millionaire. They're giving away $1 million to one lucky bettor. New and existing users get an additional shot at the payout every day you bet the tournament. Guess what? They've already given away $1 million, and they will be doing so again before the end of the tournament. So if you want a shot at becoming a millionaire or even being a thousandaire, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and use the promo code JGM so they know that I sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code JGM. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. No purchase necessary. Restrictions apply for $1 million drawing. Risk-free offer for first online real money wager only. Site credit is non-withdrawable. Expires 14 days after receipt. Terms apply. See sportsbook.fanduel.com for details. For problem gambling support, call 1-800-889-9789.
Look, NCAA tournaments, crazy stuff happens. And I always argue against making sweeping judgments about conferences based on the NCAA tournament.
Like, everybody is now convinced that the Big Ten sucks.
Right. I'm telling you, Illinois could have won this tournament. Okay? Illinois could have won this tournament. Ohio State could have been a Final Four team. They're that good. Is the Pac-12 better than we thought? It's hard to argue otherwise.
Is that not the stupidest Joe Rexroad take you've heard in a long time? And I love Joe, even though his nickname for as long back as to when he was at the Tennesseans, Bad Take Joe. But the idea of, hey, crazy things happen in the tournament. I mean, Illinois could win this tournament. They lost in the second round. I'm sorry. But just like how Marty Schottenheimer isn't considered one of the greatest coaches of all time, what you do in tournament play, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, it all matters what you do in the playoffs. The only people and teams that sit back and say, well, the tournament's crazy things happen, they're the people that lose. Losers say that. Now, I used to be in Louisville, both on the air and at school there, and that was not acceptable to say, crazy things happen. Rick Pitino forgot to take Montrezl Harrell out with 3 fouls in a game against Kentucky in the Sweet 16, and he picked up his 4th foul, but it's okay. It was a mistake. Rick made it. No. That is not allowed. And to have Joe this morning, I heard that I went on a morning walk this morning, and I heard that, and I said, for somebody who's had some bad takes, that one might take the cake from Bad Take Joe. Robbie goes, everybody thinks the Big Ten sucks. Because they do. Because for the most part, they do. They got beat by Sister Jean. They got beat by Oral Roberts. Purdue got smacked by somebody. Come on. It's like I said today, the SEC, not elite. Your best team, Alabama, goes out there and can't make a free throw in the Sweet 16. You're not an elite team. You're not a bad team, but you're not an elite team. But see, that's the basketball media crew that will try to tell you that Rick Barnes is a good coach. That every time you talk about Rick Barnes, they're like, Rick Barnes is an excellent coach, and he gets so much, and he never wins in the tournament. Imagine being UCLA today. You offered Rick Barnes a fortune to go be the head coach, and he said no. He got the same money or more money or something at Tennessee. And now they're in the Elite Eight. And Tennessee under Rick Barnes has never been there. It's crazy how this sport works out. I believe in the scoreboard. I believe in the tournament. That's what this is for. Your job isn't to make the tournament. Your job is to win when you get in the tournament. That is if you go to a good school, a basketball school, a school that cares. So I was 5-3 in the Sweet 16, started off 5-0, and then stupidly picked Florida State. Unfortunately, picked Alabama, and just kind of by luck of the draw picked Oregon. So 5-3. But now I know these teams, and Ian, I am ready to pick the entire Elite Eight right now. Tonight, Oregon State, 20 minutes. Oregon State, the 12th seed in the Midwest region, taking on the 2 seed Houston at Lucas Oil Stadium. Ian, I think I got to ride with my Oregon State Beavers.
I think you have to at this point.
Wayne freaking Tinkle. I am rolling with Wayne Tinkle. I am rolling with Oregon State. If you are a fan of this show and Oregon State wins tonight, and I am taking Oregon State and I am taking the 8 points. If Oregon State wins tonight and gets to the Final Four, I just want you to blitz the Robbie and Rex Road phone lines tomorrow. If I had to do this when the Predators swept Chicago and had to eat crow for 4 hours, Joe Rexroad, who won't say a nice thing about Wayne Tinkle, Joe Rexroad deserves to do the same thing tomorrow on Robbie and Rexroad. And Robbie, too, because they laughed when I said Wayne Tinkle was a better coach than Rick Barnes. I'm taking Oregon State. Give me Oregon State over Kelvin Sampson. Although Kelvin Sampson is a good coach, he might be a cheater. But unlike Will Wade at LSU, unlike Sean Miller at Arizona, at least he can win. Arkansas and Baylor tonight. I hate Arkansas. I do. Not that I hate the school or the state or anything like that. I mean, I'm fine with both. But I just don't like this basketball team. And I'm kind of down on the SEC. Baylor 25-2. I thought they took a nice little punch to the gut from Villanova on Saturday. I think Baylor wins tonight. I think Baylor wins convincingly. They're a 7.5-point favorite. I'm going to take Baylor to cover the 7.5. But I feel pretty good about the Bears punching their ticket to the Final Four. Tomorrow night, I can't believe this is a 6 o'clock game. Because to put it on late, put it on at 9 o'clock when the rest of it. But hey, the Predators will come on at 7, so then we can watch UCLA and Michigan after that. USC Gonzaga at 6:15 tomorrow. Gonzaga a 9-point favorite. Gonzaga could be a 21-point favorite, and I would lay the number. Give me the Bulldogs. I think they're the best team in the country. It's them and Michigan. And that takes me to UCLA and Michigan. Michigan's a 7-point favorite. Whew. That's a tough one for me. And here's why this is a tough one for me. because UCLA is a lot better than they get credit for. They beat Michigan State, a Big Ten team, and they beat Alabama, a good team, and they are just tough. I don't think they're particularly well coached, and I just think the Pac-12 is better than we thought going into this. I think the Big Ten is worse than we thought, but I think Michigan is the toughest team I have seen this season, both in the regular season and in the tournament. So begrudgingly, I'm taking Michigan. So I have 3 1 seeds that go to the Final Four: Michigan, Gonzaga, Baylor, and Wayne Tinkle and Oregon State. And if they win, Joe Rexrode will be coming on this show tomorrow, or should come on this show tomorrow. That's going to do it for us. We are out of here today. The Predators are red hot. Enjoy the basketball tonight. It's been fun to have. It's weird having it on Monday night. But enjoy the basketball tonight. Enjoy the women's basketball, too, by the way, which is about to tip off as well. Great women's games. Connecticut, Baylor coming on in 4 minutes. Enjoy that. Preds Insiders, they've been hot. That's next. Robbie Stanley, Ryan Porth. We'll see you tomorrow at 2.